2 hours west of here for you to get home?
Recording in progress.
Are you going home tonight? No.
1, 2, 1, 2.
Was going to. I think I'm going to turn out.
Oh, your adrenaline will be up. You'll be able to get.
Okay. Greetings, everybody. Can you hear me? This is on? Okay. This is the joint meeting of the Wellfleet Selectboard and the Maurice's Planning Committee on Wednesday, April 29th. The time is now 6:06 p.m. As this meeting is for a single subject and is going to allow public comment on the meeting topic, after the introductory comments by the respective chairs, we won't have a preliminary public comment period that would not appear to be necessary. Without further ado, as most of you are aware, this is a follow-up meeting from the joint meeting held on March 16th. That was primarily for the purpose of bringing the Select Board up to speed regarding the progress and direction of the Maurice's Planning Committee for the use of the campground land for affordable housing development. This was brought about by increasing awareness of concerns being expressed by a sizable number of residents regarding the scope, density, and targeted aims of the proposed development, and was intended as a working meeting, which is why public comment was not allowed at that meeting. At the end of that meeting, I stated the need to have a subsequent joint meeting, this time with public comment, to be held in advance of the spring town meeting, as there are 3 warrant articles directly impacting this project to be discussed and voted upon at town meeting. So this meeting tonight is the result of that. In consultation with town administration and the chair of the Maurice's committee, 7 specific areas of concern and discussion were identified in order to help make the meeting run more efficiently and more topic-focused as listed on the agenda. And for those of you who don't have a copy, those topics are as follows: residential density and physical characteristics of buildings, in other words, scale, height, design characteristics. Character of the town may be related to the above. Environmental impact, wastewater, drinking water, etc. Who it will serve, housing types, tenant selection process, preferences, and related aims. Municipal services and fiscal impact, traffic, and then at last of all, any general or overlooked concerns. And the plan is to, following these introductory comments and a brief presentation of the draft master plan by the chair of the Maurice's committee, Carl Sussman, we will open the floor for comment and discussion of each of these topics in order, and all who wish to will have the opportunity to address each of these topics as I have listed them. I would ask that comments be kept pertinent to the topic being discussed at the time. Everybody will have a chance to speak to each topic. I have asked for and gotten commitments from our public safety department heads and the DPW head to be on hand to answer questions which go to their respective areas of expertise. Additionally, our town administrator will be on hand to answer questions and address comments as well. He will also be working the whiteboard. That will help, I think, to keep us on track. He'll be noting comments as they are presented, and hopefully this will help prevent too much repetition. Unfortunately, a family emergency has kept our housing coordinator, Ann Schiffenhaus, from being able to attend this evening, although I understand she will try, if at all possible, to attend remotely. I ask that each speaker limit him or herself to 3 minutes. but we'll reserve the right to allow some latitude there. However, given the number of people who will likely wish to speak, 3 minutes will hopefully enable us to keep the meeting from running to an uncomfortably late hour. Each speaker will have one turn at the microphone on any one topic until all others wishing to address that topic on the floor have had a chance to be heard, after which, if a prior commenter has anything to add, it will be permitted. Please be respectful of each other, and please give the board members, committee members, and/or department heads and administrators a chance to answer any questions you may have for them or for us. Lastly, please be aware that the members of the Maurice's Planning Committee are volunteers, and as such, have devoted much time and energy to the planning process. While many of us have... Well, many of us have honest and legitimate concerns regarding the direction of the planning, there is no room or excuse for calling anyone's motives or integrity into question, and disrespectful, accusatory, or belittling commentary will not be tolerated. Constructive disagreement is part and parcel of the process of self-government, but that does not imply a need for the process to be disagreeable. We'll accomplish a great deal more by maintaining respect for one another. And with that, I will turn the floor over to Mr. Sussman.
Thank you. I want to introduce members of the committee. Maybe close to the mic. Roland, do you want to introduce yourself and we'll just work around?
Yeah, Roland Blair, I'm a member of the committee.
Hi, I'm Farooq Najmi, member of the committee.
Marianne Boswell.
Tim Sayre.
Ryan Curley, Select Board, and a member of the committee.
We also have a couple of members who I hope will be online. Emily Ochtenberg, Lauren Ackermano, Bill Gordon, and Robert Weiss. So,
Jeff is here too.
Jeff, I'm sorry, Jeff. Didn't mean to overlook you.
Okay.
Let me share my screen here. Okay, almost there. Okay. So I'm aware that there's differing points of view, sincerely held points of view from a lot of people in the community, and that's also true of the committee itself. So we don't speak with one voice. I'm sure some members of the committee may take exception to some of the points I'll be making, but I did want to have a few minutes just to provide some context for what we've been doing and speak specifically to the topics that John mentioned. So obviously residential density and Wellfleet's character has been, I sort of see them as very connected. The density is always a polarizing and frequently can be very weaponized kind of topic. So these illustrations show the point. There's this cartoon from The Independent, which a lot of the online refers to Maurice's as a megacity, and so it's sort of conjuring up what that looks like. And on the left is a photo that was photoshopped and online recently, and I can assure you that the buildings that will be at Maurice's will not look anything like that. So the topic of density is a big issue. There are 3 development patterns in Wellfleet. There's sort of most of the town residentially is single-family detached homes, and then there are the commercial strip development, particularly along Route 6. These are common throughout the country. It's everything that's been happening since the Second World War has more or less been developed this way. But the third development pattern is the village center. And Cape Cod Commission has actually tried to answer this question of what is traditional Cape Cod, and their conclusion was that it is the traditional town centers, like Wellfleet. And in fact, the report has photos of Wellfleet to illustrate the point. So there's a term that's become common these days in the planning world called missing middle, to refer to the kind of multifamily housing that we're talking about. So those pictures at the beginning show what people think about when they think about multifamily housing. But in fact, all of these examples on this slide are buildings downtown. All of them may be or could be multifamily houses. In Vermont, they've actually made a real point of addressing this as a state, and they have identified buildings throughout the state that they think reflects the rural character and indigenous architecture. They've created plans for these to be multifamily buildings. Some of them are modular, and there's a whole toolkit that they've put together. And these are some images of what architects have designed and built on the Cape and in Rhode Island in recent years, all trying to capture that sense of that missing middle kind of architecture. In terms of environmental impact, the Association for the Preservation of Cape Cod and the Housing Assistance Corporation has identified this particular site as being a high priority for affordable housing. So, and one reason it lends itself to that is that it is what's called a brownfield, and that it is previously developed. It's not a new woodlot that needs to be cleared. It has a lot of issues that need to be addressed in redeveloping it, including restoring the Silver Spring Brook. There was supposed to be a buffer under the law, and there's now trailers in that area. The plan is to remove those and turn that into conservation land. There's also a number of cesspools, so wastewater sewage is going directly into the ground, and those will all be removed and be replaced by a neighborhood-scale sewage treatment plant that will be also tied into the theater across the road and many of the neighboring houses. So the level of treatment will be such that the level of nitrogen in the bay will actually decline even after adding all of these homes. That's what has happened at Lawrence Hill, and we're pursuing the same strategy. And finally, the plan is to have this FIVE certified as net zero energy efficiency and for the use of healthy building materials. In terms of fiscal impact, new development increases the tax base, and Lawrence Hill, which taxes are roughly $3,200 a unit. So if you sort of just extrapolate that to the maximum number of units we've talked about at Maurice's, that will translate into about $600,000 to $800,000 in annual property tax revenue. So there will be revenue from it. A lot of people think that these are all tax exempt. That's not the case. Even if it's a nonprofit developer, they'll still pay taxes. In terms of its impact on municipal spending, obviously whenever there's growth in a community, there's additional costs, but most of those costs are not entirely variable. So there's things like the school is the best example, where we know there's a lot of under-enrollment at this point. So children who are coming into Maurice's and going to the Wellfleet Elementary School, the school is there, the teachers are in the classroom. There's apparently 7 students in the first grade and 7 or 8 in the kindergarten. So it's not all expense to the town. And finally, there's going to be additional economic activity as a result of more people being in town, and that in itself will generate additional tax revenues for the town. Traffic is a big issue. It's a very congested spot. This past summer, there was counting that was done of the traffic. This is one page of the report from July 30th, right in the middle of the summer. Route 6 southbound and northbound, as well as Maurice's. And, you know, this is congested and it's been a problem no matter what. It's a bigger problem in the summer, but there already are a lot of families that spend time at Maurice's. There's 200 campsites. There's trailers, rather, as about 20 campsites. There's cabins. So there is a fair amount of traffic. But even if you quadrupled what this measured, it's still about 3%. It's not a huge addition to it. But we are hoping that it's also an opportunity to get a good traffic study out of this and be able to approach Department of Transportation again about coming up with a better solution than what exists there now. And if that doesn't work, we can also try to approach this politically at the State House, try to get the administration, which has been very eager to see more housing built, and particularly in seasonal communities, see whether they can help us out on this. So we hope that's something that can get addressed along the way. Who will be served? There's been a lot of chatter online about the fact that there's different reports listing how many cost-burdened households there are in Wellfleet. That is cited in the master plan, but there's many more sources of demand for this housing, including extreme commuters, multi-generational households, tenants living in illegal apartments, new hires. Hiring has been a big problem in town because there hasn't been housing. So all of this will generate demand for these units. So it is not just a matter of cost-burdened households, though certainly we want to do whatever we can to address that. So there's been a lot of discussion also about the division of the type of housing. So about half of the housing we're talking about, 50%, we expect to be affordable. That means less than 80, the households would have earned less than 80% of the average, area median income for the Barnstable County. Attainable is a category of 80% to 200%. And then we have another category of affordable, attainable, or other special housing forms to address unmet needs of households residing in or working in Wellfleet. So we expect to have a mix, though all of this will be a challenge. And then in terms of home ownership, we've estimated about 75 homes, rental about 125, and in that either category is another swing of 50 units. And that's if we build out to the maximum number of units. Other concerns. This is financial feasibility rarely comes up in conversations about this. So I just want to talk a minute about what we think about a lot in the committee. There's really 3 components to the cost of building housing. There's the land, there's the hard costs of the building itself, the construction workers, the materials, and then there's soft costs like legal fees, architectural fees, things like that. So when it comes down to financing, the town already owns the land, so that comes in right at the beginning with equity, which is, I think it's best to kind of think about how we use the money. Think about a mortgage, if you have one. So the equity is really equivalent to a down payment. So the land it takes out a cost and therefore provides some subsidy, which is basically equity that stays in the project. Then there'll be debt and whatever amount that can be supported with the rents. And once you get past that, there is that funding gap, what it will take to fund the construction. And that's the challenge we face. So a lot of that obviously is public money. There's federal money from the low-income housing tax credits. The state has some funds, and hopefully we'll have some additional funds. And then it's also possible that the town will be asked to chip in. There's short-term rental tax, which was supposed to be used for dealing with our housing problems. And there's other sources that we can go after to help fill those gaps. So that's basically an overview of the issues that are on the agenda tonight, and I look forward to what people have to say.
Well, thank you, Carl. Is there anyone else on either committee that wishes to have a word before we go to the public?
I'll just go very quickly. So the cost for construction, I honestly can't believe it. I grew up here. My dad was a general contractor. I would not be able to understand the cost of construction when I was, compared to when I was growing up to where it is now. There is the Habitat for Humanity homes that were built just recently in Wellfleet cost almost $600,000 a piece. And that's with, free labor and a lot of donations of construction materials and things of that nature. It doesn't make sense to me why it costs so much, but unfortunately it does. And that's really one of the, in addition to the high value of properties that exist already, that cost for construction is really a major issue for any time you want to try to tackle this or housing issues. And it's largely the same across the state, unfortunately. So, when we're talking about funding gap, it's not a small amount. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars or more per unit. I think Lawrence Hill was around 800 to 900,000 a unit. And there's this huge gap, and the townhouses cost less than, if it was freestanding single-family homes, and then the, apartment building, which, everybody has mixed feelings on. Those were by unit like 20 or 30% less costly than the townhouses. And, particularly for attainable housing, there's no funding out there for that currently. Hopefully in the future there is. It can always change. But basically, we have to get creative and willing to accept some compromises in order to make attainable housing, feasible for people. And it might mean row houses. It might mean townhouses. The compromise is either you make these small compromises and get something built, or it's just unviable. It's not uncommon, for a funding gap of over $500,000 to $600,000, and so if you build 10, you're $5-6 million, and it's just nobody has a good solution, and it's one of the driving forces for just the general unaffordability of housing across the area.
Anyone else on the board? All right, seeing none, what I'd like to do, unless somebody has any objection, is to go 3 and 3. In other words, have 3 people speak to each topic in the room and then go to 3 people online, because we have an awful lot of people online as well, about 90 people. So if that, unless somebody has an objection to that, why don't we start off with in the room, and who would like to begin the process? On the, we'll first be addressing the topic of residential density and physical characteristics of buildings, such as scale, height, design characteristics. No one in the room? Then let me see who's online with their hand up. Oh, okay. There we go. Okay. Please identify yourself, too.
My name is Jeff Glanville. I live on Springbrook Road. You're talking about the design of the houses, and all the houses in that area wouldn't exactly blend in with this project. There's supposed to be 3-story buildings, which are going to tower over some of the, like R Street, Springbrook. They're going to be very visible, and I think that's a big negative thing because it just doesn't blend in.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to address that before we move on?
I'll just, I don't want to just clarify one thing, which is that during the master planning phase, we got a lot of feedback about that. Louder? Oops. We got a lot of feedback from the neighbors about this, and at this point, we had moved buildings that we imagined near that Springbrook Road. We've moved them back. There's trailers now that are much closer, that are in that area that needs to be a buffer for the brook. So there's actually going to be a wider buffer than exists now, and all the buildings on the north side we've projected as being 2-story, and the 3 stories are really more towards the center of the site. We've tried to accommodate people's comments around that.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Helen Miranda Wilson, a person who has worked off and on relentlessly for 27 years for housing. And I've also lived in a rent-stabilized place in another state. So I benefited from it. I'd like to remind everybody in the room that this, if I'm in a bad mood, I say fantasy, about having denser collections of dwellings near each other, as you have in traditional villages, was based on the fact that people got places on horses, and now they don't. And having lived in a number of places that I shared walls with and ceilings and floors with, I have to tell you that what we have here that works best for people with less money is not living in a kind of condensed place. Even pre-war buildings in New York City, you can still hear the neighbors. And you can have a little house somewhere and have the kind of privacy and good relations with neighbors that come from not being cheek by jowl. That's one thing. About the fact that I have worked for housing very hard, but I hate 40B, because 40B, which is what allows, for example, 3 stories and not keeping to our height of 28 feet, it walks right through all the carefully drafted and considered over years, through experience, of our zoning bylaws. And the density at Lawrence Hill, and I like the look of buildings, but it is an urban situation, really. And I think it's to be avoided here. I've lived way too close to the person next door to me here in Wellfleet my whole life, and when we've had good neighbors, it's been great, but you can't guarantee that. And I think it's perfect hell having to share walls and ceilings and floors with people that you may not get on with. And condemning people with less money to that is, I think, an unkindness. So that's me on density, that's me on 40B, and that's me on the character of Wellfleet being based on the fact that the center of town was set up like that when people had to get around on horses, and closer was better. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Is there any response to that before we move on?
I'll go very quickly. Our preferred pathway is not to pursue a 40B development. We are in the process of developing a zoning overlay. It will give the town additional measures of control over the project as it moves forward. We really haven't considered 40B for this project at all.
Okay, thank you. We'll take one more in the room before we go to online. Could you? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
I know they keep talking about we haven't looked at 40B, but if you do a overlay plan that allows 45-foot tall buildings and 32-foot tall buildings, then you don't need to do a 40B. You can still take LIHTC funding, and you can build these massive monstrosities that are much higher than anything we have in this town. If you want to see what a 3-story building will look like, drive down Long Pond Road over there by Lawrence Hill and look at that building. And that's what 3 stories will look like, okay? So if we do overlays that allow all of these different things, then the builder doesn't have to come in. It would be a friendly 40B is the way they term it, okay? Yes, and that's what I've been told in the meetings that we've had. Even if it's not a 40B, they can build according to the overlay. And if the overlay allows massive buildings, they can build massive buildings.
Thank you. Anyone else on either board? Okay, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Allison Carnduff, and I'm a Wellfleet resident. I live on Locust Lane. And I've lived in the country, I've lived in very urban areas, and I've lived in suburban areas. And what I've noticed through all my life experience is actually people prefer to live in what they personally prefer, not what everybody else necessarily prefers. So I really want to call out the chair of the committee when he described and gave me words for what I couldn't describe myself, which is the missing middle, and those pictures of 3-story multifamily buildings in downtown Wellfleet that are part of our historic fabric. And there's no reason why the density to achieve the number of units that the committee is seeking to achieve can't be done in a way that is design sensitive and reflects our priorities as a historic community and a community based on a village concept. And so I'm hoping that we come to see sensitively designed density as our friend, and I commend the committee and the select board for taking charge of this process and leading the process. If Wellfleet doesn't change, it will die. And so in order to stay the same, to have kids in our schools, to have vibrant businesses, to have service providers for our elderly, and in fact for everybody, we need to have a range of housing affordable to a range of people in different configurations. So I really appreciate all your efforts, and thank you.
Thank you. Is there any response to that on either board? Okay.
One of the things that has been curious and of interest to me is we look at the pedal in the loop that was done by Studio G, and what I keep on hearing from people is that's what it's going to look like. And we don't know what it's going to look like. And part of what I think would be really helpful to everybody who is here, who is online, who is sitting in positions of authority and the committee, rather than just, we don't want this, we don't want that, what do you want? How would you like this to look? And that was very helpful. We need more of that because we're not hearing that. We're hearing no, no, no. What we need is we need some creative solutions that we might be able to act on. Thank you.
Thank you. Going to, unless somebody's got anything, going online to, I see a hand raised, somebody, the initials JT, if you could unmute and identify yourself.
Yes, thank you. This is John Tanzi, resident of Wellfleet. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Basically, my concern of this project is that not only the conformity to the integrity and character of our town to keep its rural nature, a few things are bothering me. One is the plan. I don't see a well-formed and planned plan and execution being brought forth for the water table. I don't see one for the wastewater. I don't see one for the traffic that's going to be caused coming out of this development. And I also don't see anything in regards to, the town of Wellfleet owns this land. So that is half the battle of any developer, right? And my stepson is in my basement. Several of his friends that work down here have gone to high school and graduated in Nauset, DY, etc. They don't have that $850,000 to $1 million to buy a home. And they make above the threshold to be considered for any of these housing developments being created on the Cape in the last couple of years, and this one here in question at Maurice's. So I don't understand why the town of Wellfleet can't raise the threshold of income for single mothers that have children. One in particular was on several of the local community sites that was making $2,000, if that, above the threshold. She was denied. There's a vast population of people that grew up here that want to stay here. The 25 to 35, 40-year-old people, the ones that are going to be having children and continue with commerce, start businesses, and maintain, the lifestyle on Cape Cod. And the financial situation that's been brought upon this Maurice's campground is denying those local children, young people, I should say, the right to stay here. They're moving away. And then you come back and say that you're going to have low income. Where are these people going to work in the wintertime? The jobs that they're going to get at the income levels that you're proposing are working at gas stations, 7-Elevens, Cumberland Farms. Where are the teachers going to live? Where is my stepson, who's a plumber, going to live? Where's his friend, the carpenter, going to live? Where's the nurse that's going to work down at the hospital going to live? I mean, you're addressing, allegedly, a housing situation and a crisis, but you're not, this isn't pertaining to the people that already live on Cape Cod. You want to bring people from off Cape at a low income rate and put them in, I say this loosely, in housing developments that they're used to in the inner city, an urban plan. You could build 3 houses per acre, a yard, a garage for the shell fishermen, the teachers, the children to play, a normal household. And I do not see any of that in this proposed plan. So I think, and I speak for a lot of people, I know I do.
Yeah, John, we're well past the 3-minute mark.
Okay,
so.
well, thank you. So I said my piece, and I hope you keep Wellfleet.
Okay, first of all, I appreciate it, John, thank you. That is a topic that we're going to be getting to, which is who this will serve. Who do we want this to serve? Right now we're dealing with the density and physical characteristics issues, so I'd like to keep it to that to try to keep the meeting on track, if I could. Thank you. Online, who else do we have? And we will be addressing that, by the way, with the members of the board and our department heads will be addressing that issue coming up, because I'm sure you're not the first person with these concerns. Online.
I don't see anyone online, John.
Okay, in that case, who in the room is next? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Karen Stern, and I'm a direct abutter to Maurice's Campground. I want to speak to 2 points relative to density. So you mentioned that the change in the traffic will not be any different from the middle of July or any greater than what you counted in July. I live right next door. I cannot get out of my driveway in July. It's impossible. So if we're talking about being similar or no greater than what's happening in the summer, I think that's not a very, unless I misunderstood you, that's not a very good analogy. That's number one. Number two, why haven't we not looked at a lower density? I think the elephant in this room is most people are against the density. We're talking about 250 units. I think I read in the master plan that's 1.5 bodies per unit or something of that nature. Probably more people we don't count or know about. Why have we not put forth any kind of plan for a lower density? I don't understand that. I think you'd have a complete, open discussion from both sides of the story here if we can look at an alternative plan and not only focus on a large plan. Now, I know that the financing is the key to that. We all understand that now, that the reason the density is so high is because we don't know how to pay for it. Well, I think that means we need to go back to the drawing board and maybe look at some other alternative solutions so that we can have a lower density. Does anybody have any comment to why we haven't looked at a lower density?
Anyone on the board?
I mean, density is one of the best ways we have that we can control to make units affordable. It is, as Ryan was saying, the building at Lawrence Road that is that's on Lawrence Hill, that's on Long Pond Road. The square foot cost of construction for that was 30% less than the townhouses. And the townhouses, in turn, are less expensive than a freestanding single-family house. Part of that, and then the other part of this is that we need to be able to finance all the infrastructure that goes with this. If you try to spread that cost among fewer units, particularly at the density that John was talking about, there's just no way to do it. That in the end, we do have this constraint of financial feasibility. So I know lots of people who would like their own yard and a quarter acre or a half acre, whatever. And, we all understand that, but it's not necessarily possible. We're trying to do what we can, and we are trying to address the population that John was talking about. When we talked about attainable housing, there is very little of that, and it's going to be hard to do, but that's what we're working on.
So what I just heard, I just want to make sure, is the only way to build there is at a high number because that's the only financing that you believe is available to support that, in a nutshell.
More or less.
Not necessarily what the community needs.
I understand what the community wants, if there was a way to do it, that would be great. We just haven't figured out how to do that, and
Okay.
I haven't seen others do that. The few examples we have are habitat, and that is, as Ryan was pointing out the numbers, it's still very expensive, and it takes a lot of subsidy even then. So, and in the end, it's, in 30 years or whatever, maybe a little more, Habitat has built on the whole Cape about 180 units of housing. It's just hard to scale it to the level we need here to meet people's needs for housing.
I would just add that in the master plan, it's reflective of the community meetings. Our initial community meeting had 200 homes, and basically the attendance of that were encouraging us to do more. So it is, reflective of those meetings. I mean, sentiment might have changed some since, but, there was, they were held in this room. The second one, we probably exceeded the legal capacity of the room. And it's reflective of that input in the master planning process as to, how many people felt was desirable, so.
Tim?
Like, so on density, I've heard comments online that this is a high-density project. And if you look at the definitions of density, it is in the middle of the moderate density, which is defined as 5 to 20 units per acre. The reasons that Carl suggested about the expense is a valid one, but also the ongoing operating expenses of higher density, which I call moderate density apartment-style buildings, is ongoing basis much lower. They're rather hyper energy efficient. And then the last reason to have high density as a desirable thing, in my opinion, is that this is the last parcel of land in Wellfleet of this size.
Until the movie theater
Okay, I think,
area gets sold.
I think we need to move on.
Excuse
Tim.
me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Tim,
And she was correct, until the movie theater gets sold. There's 10 acres over there, not including the drive-in portion of it, as far, from what I've been told. And so that could be another place that places could be built. I personally have looked at trying to find other financing for this. There's modular homes that are available that go up quickly, and they cost under $250,000 each. We own the land, okay? We're going to end up paying for most of the sewage over there anyway. That was revealed at a couple meetings ago. Any grants we can get will help us with that, which is great. So we could take out bonds, which we could then help build the modular. Then we can put it up under the Fair Housing Act, but also under the Cape Cod Seasonal Act. We can help teachers, not teachers, but, all the people that are in that. And at town meeting, they're going to be trying to add, and it has to go before the legislature, but fishermen, teachers, people like that also to it. So if you can do that, we can give them the piece of land, not give, but sell, say for $10,000, 10,000 square feet. And under the new Seasonal Act, you can put a house on 10,000 square feet. So if you have a house there, the equity of the land will help them getting a loan. The bank will give them the loan against the house that they want to purchase. The money goes back to the town to help pay the bonds off. Will it cost you some money in the long run? Yes. Will it cost you the full amount of the bonds? No. But that is a way that we can do this. And we can build these slowly. We don't have to build, 60 of them at once. We have 16.5 buildable acres there. 3 acres of it has to be affordable under the loan we took. Okay? That still leaves you 13 and a half acres over there. If you can build 4 on an acre at 12 acres, because you need some for infrastructure and stuff like that, you're talking about probably 50, 55 houses, at 43,000 square feet per acre. My wife yells at me when I do numbers. But if we could get 50 houses over there, okay, that's great. If we only do 30 houses and we still put up an apartment building because we believe we need to help house our seniors in apartments who aren't looking for housing, we can do that, all right? And they keep talking about the low income. That's because they want to accept LIHTC funding. Yes, there's LIHTC funding out there, okay? But it's not the only way to do things, all right? So we need to look at alternates. We need to slow down. We need to back up. We need to see what the townspeople want. When this property was put up to be purchased, they said it was for the townspeople. They didn't say it was to help house everybody in the entire state, okay? And I understand there's people that used to live here and want to live here again. great. I'll be happy to have them back, okay? I understand there's some families that need housing that have never lived here. That's fine. But we need to also look at our 70% that we asked for. That didn't happen at Lawrence Hill because 16 of the units couldn't be included in the 70% preference because they were 50% and 30% AMI, okay? That was ruled on. So now you only had 30 units that could be at the 70% AMI, right? So while we have housed some Wellfleet families, if we ran this ourselves, we could probably get more Wellfleet people in it. Now, yes, there's a fair housing law, but like I said, there's seasonal community designations too. So that would help us with this. We also could go slower. And yeah, it might cost you a few dollars, but anything they do is going to cost you a few dollars. You're currently in about $13 million on this piece of property. You paid 6.5 for it with the interest. It's going to be about 11, excuse me, about 11.4 million. You paid $850,000 to have water put in over there. You've paid for multiple studies and people to help us with overlays, with how the septic's going to work over there and things like that. So you're in $13 million so far, all right? So you've spent money. To spend a little more to get what our townspeople and you as the town want, I don't see an issue with that. Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, come on up to the mic.
Hi. Pretty much everything was said, I was going to say, except for, I'm glad you brought up that slide about the Cape Cod Commission saying that this was a good spot for housing. And I believe in the FAQs, at the community engagement to purchase this property, it says that the Cape Cod Commission identified it as a priority spot for moderately dense housing. Now, I want to know your numbers for moderate. Are they rural numbers? Because rural and urban are very different. Are you telling me those are rural density numbers?
I've only seen, sorry, may I respond? Yeah, I've only seen one set of definitions for low, moderate, and high.
Right.
And that describes low as 0 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
Moderate is 5 to 20, and this is units per acre.
Mm-hmm.
0 to 4 is low, 5 to 20 is moderate, and 20 to 100 or above is high. And Maurice's is at 12, right in the middle of the 5 to 20.
It's not really 12. If you really just, if you take the buildable acres, it's not really 12. And then you add the seasonal units and so forth in there. But regardless, you do have to dig a little bit because there is a substantial difference between a rural moderate density and a urban, okay? And I think a lot of your consultants are really speaking from an urban point of view. So I'm going to give you what you want. Actually, no, Tim did. You saying 50 houses plus 30 plus?
No, I'm saying
what
we
are you
could.
Looking at?
It depends on what we need for this town. I'll be very honest,
Right.
and we need to figure it out.
Right.
If we get the portion passed, we could house our workforce housing,
Right.
our nurses, our teachers, our shell fishermen. It's not all going to be shell fishermen.
Yeah.
There's probably 4 or 5 families that might need to be there. Okay, we can house all the different workers. The fire when they need places, the police when they need places. You know, so
Well, I can speak
it would
for-
kind of be up to
sorry.
the town.
I can
Sorry, I
speak
should have asked through the
as
chair.
an abutter. I think I could speak for a lot of people in my neighborhood. Nothing would make us happier for that to be a more workforce-oriented, including shellfish and all the water and all the noise and everything else, because our street is very much a lot of shell fishermen there. So I was going to throw out, if it's 250 and you really want to know what somebody wants, I would say 100, but if you could do less, I mean, and that's still density. Even if it's 100, that means we're still for affordable housing because that's still way denser than it is now. Okay, and I know you can argue, oh, there's so many campsites and whatnot, but you're really talking about, 13-foot high little individual structures that are spread out all along the 21 acres and stuff. So 100, however you have to do it. I mean, I would love to say, oh, do it all with a bond or with, land trust. That would be great. I would love for Wellfleet to have control over that. At this point, I just want to say 100 or less, and that's what I think I want anyway. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go online. There's somebody with a hand raised, or at least there was.
Suzanne Ryan.
Yep. Okay. If you want to unmute and identify yourself, thank you.
Hi, Suzanne Ryan. I live in South Wellfleet. I have a couple of questions, and the first one is to Tim's point about how Lawrence Hill not honoring the 70% local preference on Lawrence Hill. And is that actually accurate that we're not honoring that? I thought the selection process is still ongoing. And so there's still locals being considered, et cetera, et cetera. That's question number one. And number two, for Maurice's, I understood that one of the reasons for going for a few higher density buildings in the mix was because it's more ecologically responsible, specifically in terms of wastewater and sewer. So I was wondering if someone could speak to that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody wish to address that?
What you're referring to is, when they talk about cluster housing, the idea that you put the houses close together but leaves more open space. I think that's what you were referring to. What was your other point? Oh, the Lawrence Hill. Some of us were taken by surprise on that. It is, in fact, what the lottery is managed by the Housing Assistance Corporation, which is a regional nonprofit that has a contract with the state to manage this kind of process and vouchers and things like that in Barnstable County. And the state allows up to 70% local preference, but that doesn't apply to the lowest income units. And that's for fair housing law reasons, as I understand it. So there's some number of units, I don't remember the exact number, that was excluded. And then it's 70% on the others had the local preference. So, and that's, it's true. When you take money from these sources, there are some restrictions, and that was one of them.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things that hasn't really been brought up yet is the need for some kind of seasonal workforce housing. And one of the questions that we've asked, and we haven't really gotten good answers about, is how many people in the summer at Maurice's really are summer workforce workers. And one of the things that's happening is that is now something that's on the agenda for the new person managing Maurice's, and our most excellent housing coordinator, Ann Schiffinhaus. They have this on their radar to actually get real numbers. So none of what we've talked about so far tonight addresses that need. And also, we have not found any financial outlets for building that. So that's still an open question. Just wanted to put that out there.
Anyone else? Come on up.
How you doing? My name is William Barrio. I was also concerned about the photo that you showed. None of those houses basically look like anything at Lawrence Hill. Just throwing it out there. If you're going to do the slideshow, should probably put a couple of those in there. I wasn't too sure about the numbers of Lawrence Hill, but that's an interesting fact. I would like to see us take a little bit slower move on this project. Maybe do like 100 units and let's see how this goes. Because at the end of the day, we don't even know how that project went. That was only 50, right? 46? 46, right? Okay, so then we're going to do how many times bigger? And we're just going to Hail Mary it? I mean, I think that's a horrible idea for Wellfleet. And that's why I'm here, just trying to state that we should see how this project goes, figure out the problems, work on the next project, instead of doing the Wellfleet way and just messing it all up.
Thank you.
John, you have Emily Etchenberg and Jeffrey Sachs online with their hand raised.
Okay. Let's take the next person in line here, and then I'll go to those two.
They're on the committee.
Oh, are they? Okay, yeah, then,
Both committee members.
yeah, okay, as committee members, I'm going to let them speak first then. Go ahead, Emily.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify the situation at Lawrence Hill in response to the question that was asked. So of the 34 applicants that have already been accepted and housed, 17 are from the Outer Cape. That includes 11 from Wellfleet itself, and another 10 are from other Cape towns, leaving only 7 out of the 34 that are coming from off Cape so far. Just to clarify something that Carl said about the local preference for the deeply subsidized units, I've done a little digging on this, and the fact is that there was a unique situation at Lawrence Hill, which will not be replicated here. It wasn't the fair housing laws, but it was a particular funding source that was used in that project, which is not available anymore, that prohibited local preference on the deeply subsidized units. So my understanding is that at least a Cape-wide preference, Cape-wide, will be permitted for the deeply subsidized units in the future. So in summary, this is a project where the vast majority of units so far are going to Cape residents, and 50% so far Outer Cape. That's the 4 towns. I think that's pretty good.
Thank you. Jeffrey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to pick up on Suzanne's point about how high density can be more ecologically responsible. And I think the civil engineers who have been working with the town for several years have identified housing as a singularly good solution for our wastewater treatment problems. By creating a few dense projects around town that can support the kind of wastewater treatment plant which is coming online at Lawrence Hill, we can significantly reduce the nitrogen flowing into the harbor. When Lawrence Hill is fully online, the fire department, the school, the police department, and all the new housing will be emitting less nitrogen through that plant than is currently coming out of those emitters. And the same thing can happen at Maurice's, which can address the housing to be built plus the surrounding neighborhood. And by targeting these areas, which are very high emitters now, we can help address the other issue in town, which is wastewater.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair, can I
Yeah,
just
yeah, go ahead.
respond to
Sure.
Will's question? And basically, this is not going to all be built at once, regardless of what happens there. It's more than likely it will be built in phases. It will probably be like, you get the first 40 to 50, you go through that process, and then you do the next. So there's going to be times in between, and it's going to take a long time to build out. And at least for me, I think we can handle a lot of that through, it will probably be either one RFP or multiple RFPs. where the select board at the time kind of decides what they would prioritize for that particular phase. That way it adapts to the needs of the town as they're seen at that time. And throughout we've emphasized architectural elements as well. There's going to be design criteria regardless, but one of them is to utilize a more traditional architectural style.
Can I add one more thing to that, which is the request for proposals that was issued for Lawrence Road included in the design guidelines mid-century modern, and that was what the developer leaned towards. And we've heard loud and clear that people don't prefer that and don't feel like that's traditional Wellfleet. And so the design guidelines can influence what actually gets built there, and they'll be different from the ones that were part of the RFP for Lawrence Hill.
I actually have a question, if I can just jump in ahead of you for a minute. Given that this, as Ryan pointed out, this is going to be phased in any case, however we decide to flesh this out in terms of the ultimate density we end up agreeing on. How might Tim's observations on small houses fit into that plan? Because I think there's a lot of merit to that.
It's certainly worth looking at, but it is, we're talking about small units, and we have to get the infrastructure to all of these units. So I don't have the numbers offhand, but it doesn't seem on its face like it's going to be easy. And I think, Tim's got some interesting ideas. If the town is really willing to issue bonds and pay them back, we can, generate a lot of capital for things. But the taxpayers have to be willing to pay that.
Well, none of this is going to be easy. That I think goes without saying. Go ahead. Sorry to keep you waiting.
Good evening.
Speak.
A lot of things in life are not easy, but you still have to do them. I think that's a great idea, the modular homes, and I think that, along with tiny homes, would fit in with the whole Wellfleet character. It wouldn't.
Could you, by the way, could you tell us who you are?
Oh, did I do that again? Cindy Kelb. Sorry.
That's all right.
I think that would fit in with Wellfleet and with the character, and I think the privacy that people get having, even if it's a tiny home. I raised my kids in a 22 by 26, one-bedroom cottage, one bed, and we lived like that for 10 years. And we lived. That was 50 years ago that I couldn't find an apartment. So it's nothing new. 50 years ago when I moved here. Anyway, tiny homes, people be happy with that. That's all. They just want a home ownership. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca, anybody online? Emily? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to point out, modular housing is great, and everybody wants to do that. So around the corner from where I live, on Pole Dyke Road, just this last year was put up a modular house, very attractive. I think the selling price was $700,000, and that's without land, because the land is being held in trust. So once again, to go back to feasibility, this is not affordable and likely not attainable without a significant amount of subsidy. The Habitat homes that Ryan was just describing and are selling for $600,000 include $100,000, I don't know about Wellfleet, but the ones that I was looking at that are being proposed in Orleans, $100,000 contribution from the town each, plus roughly the same amount contributed by Habitat. And that's the only way to get these costs to the seller down. So, it's a lot of money that would need to be raised for this, which is why we are trying to be cautious and realistic about the number of homeownership units that can be built, for which there are no government programs. And Habitat, of course, reflects the sweat equity, so that brings the cost down. It doesn't make the cost of building any cheaper. Modular housing is cheaper than stick-built housing, but still, that house is $700,000.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I think that there are terms that are hard to entirely isolate. Tiny homes can be as little as 300 square feet. ADUs can be under 900 square feet. Modular homes can be anything you want them to be. And modular homes, which is what Tim is talking about, I think that the best word to use is like an ADU, like what you see on the way to the transfer station, those two new small houses. Those are in the range that Tim is talking about, $50,000 to $150,000.
Thank you.
Were those two homes not the ones that Emily said were
The
700?
same, that's what I'm talking about. The price to the buyer was $700,000.
For two or for one?
It is for two,
Without the price of land.
without land.
Okay.
So let's just get realistic here.
There are houses, there are ADUs that you can buy that are much less than that.
Go ahead, and just as a reminder, we're still on the density issues.
Yes, still density. David Mead Fox. I have to say, for starters, that I am completely a fan, on the one hand, there's another hand, but on the one hand, of single-family homes. I grew up in one. I live in one. The freedom, the space, the lack of neighbors close by, it's wonderful, of course. And if I could wave a magic wand and we had a lot more land and building was much less cheaper and we did not have essentially an environmental catastrophe over our heads right now, I would love everybody to have their own single-family home of whatever size, however close together. That would be awesome. But I've decided after a great deal of thought that that's, in many situations, those days are gone. And I think they're gone for the reasons in a way that I just said. They're gone because of the cost, as Ryan has talked about. They're gone because we cannot afford to ignore the environment as much as we have. We have to do things. Density is a way to make the environment better. Density is a way to make things more affordable. And I don't mean extreme density. What I mean is a cluster, a kind of a village density. I think of it as a village density. Whether it's technically moderate or low or urban is less meaningful to me than to say it's like a village. You build a little village and you have this massive need for housing that is, again, I wish it wasn't there? We all wish it wasn't there. But to say that we should, because we all have our own biases, I think we have to stretch ourselves. We are in a crisis. Housing crisis, environmental, we have a crisis. We can't afford to do things, already 5 years we've been planning this, 5 years, okay? We can't afford, in my view, to slow down, to wait. We need to move forward. I will remind all of us that the master plan is not a blueprint. It is not a dictate. It is not a mandate. As I understand it, nothing in the master plan is required or definite. The types of housing, none of it, and there's certainly nothing to do with the architecture. I mean, I would love to say one last thing in terms of density is to have what the center of Wellfleet is like be on Maurice's, to me, and then clusters of places around it with that kind of architecture. Nothing against the mid-century modern, you know. My wife's a big fan of it. But I have to say, I personally would love to see pure, old-fashioned, basically 18th, 19th century architecture in the entire development. And that would be like Wellfleet to me. So, variety of comments, but thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Tim Gordon online there, and after that I'm going to go to Kathleen Bacon.
Tim Olson and Kathleen Bacon.
Yeah. What's that?
I think you said Bill Gordon?
Tim Olson.
Tim Olson. I'm sorry.
Hi. No worries. Whitman Lane. I have a question. At the beginning, there was a series of slides, and this is getting just to get a better idea of the cost of things and affordability of these units. So my understanding is, we're in this situation where we need 250 units, which is going to cost however much to build, and then we have, I think it was towards the end, the slide that showed the mortgage costs. You get a mortgage to build these things, which would then be covered by the rents, right? So at a projection of building 250 units, just to get an idea of how much does it cost to rent these apartments, 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms? So I just have an idea of affordability, because a lot of the people who are against this plan, they want fewer units. I'm trying to get an idea of I know Tim Sayre has other ideas of how to lower the cost, but as far as what a lot of the committee has been thinking of so far, what is the current idea? 250 units, what does a 1, 2, 3 bedroom apartment cost to rent there?
Can someone answer that?
Well, before that, just so you're aware, William Gordon is also a member of the committee as well. He has his hand up, but
okay, that's who I thought I was calling.
yeah. In terms of rent, generally it's capped at no more than 30% of their income. The remainder is typically made up with various subsidies. The housing voucher is the most common one. I wish there was something similar for owners in their own house, but it's similar to construction. Most of the larger programs that provide these various subsidies are unfortunately geared for rental, so they're capped. The other part of that is that particularly for those with lower incomes, you're talking, if it's 30% AMI, it's like $29,000. If it's a one person, a family of 6, I think is $48,000. When you get that large or that low of an income, you really can't afford to maintain a house anymore. It's not a good position to place people in. So like Habitat for Humanity does not typically serve people earning 30% AMI because they're not going to succeed. And Habitat wants their new owners to succeed. So what happens is that they pay a small amount of rent monthly, but the housing voucher makes up the entirety of the difference in the responsibilities to maintain, wherever they are is, in whatever shape it might be, if it's a detached ADU or whatever else, is the responsibility of the landlord and not their responsibility. We just have to keep in mind that people's situations vary greatly. So.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gordon, I apologize. Technology is not always my friend here, so.
Sorry, I had to get off my, put on my audio. Don't worry, I'm actually really glad I got delayed because the last few people who spoke were very eloquent and I thought made some really good points. So I think it worked out for the best. I guess what I wanted to throw in here, and maybe it's reiterating some of what we've heard, but density has to be looked at as our friend. It's not the enemy. And if there isn't the right tipping point of density, we won't be able to pay for the fixed costs. The fixed costs are the fixed costs. All the stuff, some of the things that have already been identified as costs to date, those are fixed costs. And there are others. We won't be able to pay for the infrastructure that's needed, whether it's 100 units or 200 units. The kind of wastewater and the roads and other things that need to be done it needs to be spread out among units. And what I'm hearing is that as the numbers go down, and we do need to meet the I call it the middle income or the middle housing, as it was put, has to be addressed. There will be a tipping point where this development would end up being much more market and than I think was intended. And we won't address the need for affordable housing, addressing some of the rents that were just laid out, which was really informative to hear the kind of rents that we might be getting, and also the income levels that we want to reach. So I think there's a tipping point here, and frankly, when we refine the plan and a developer is brought in, or developers are brought in, they're going to find the exact tipping point, and there may be a reduction in units, but it seems unless we want to go almost all market, something like 50 units won't be feasible, and I don't think we'll be addressing the need. And then one other point that came up earlier, it has to do with where people move, and it's really interesting to hear the Lawrence data, because we're lucky that we can have a very recent database to look at this. But in the years that I've done this and done different kinds of development, and people have been worried about who's going to move in and where they're going to come from, generally speaking, the people who move into our developments, and I've done rural developments, mostly the majority ends up being people from the actual community, then maybe the abutting ones. In this case, that would be the Outer Cape, abutting, maybe a little further down the Cape. People are not moving from far away in general. There are exceptions. Even with the affordable units that are enticing, people generally want to stay near their friends, near their families, in the communities that they're currently in. So I think it's a bit of a misconception to think that there's going to be a huge influx of outsiders. I think that whatever housing gets built would be mostly local people and then mostly Cape. And that is kind of there's data that usually supports that. Thanks for giving me the chance to chime in.
No, certainly. Kathleen Bacon?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good evening. For the public record, Kathleen Bacon, former select board member and also a member of the Lawrence Hill Task Force. I just want to speak briefly about Lawrence Hill because that's come up in the conversation. I was the no vote on the developer that was chosen for the project for a number of reasons. I'm not going to go into that. But specifically, in our RFP for development, we asked that natural vegetation on that site be kept intact and on the property as much as possible. The fact that this developer went up there and clear cut that lot, was completely off the reservation. We also specified that we wanted 70% local preference. We really pushed for 70% local preference, and the developer sought loans that constricted us getting 70% local preference. So again, not what we expected, and I'm very disappointed. But to the Maurice's project, and density and all of the infrastructure costs that are going to be, tagged on to this. My biggest concerns moving forward is that it's going to burden the taxpayer in Wellfleet and push out young families and seniors. They will not be able to afford the taxes that this project is going to cost the average resident. We're looking at wastewater and sewering the central district, and these are things that we've been dealing with for 22 years. We can't put them off. They're going to come on the tax bill, no matter how hard we try to, push this away. So my suggestion moving forward for Maurice's Campground is to look at either public and private development, a partnership that we can leverage private money, not look at low-income housing tax credits. Another plan for me would be to just sell the property to a developer, sell it to them for $100 and say, we want 3 acres for habitat, we want 5 acres for modular homes, we want 50 to 75 workforce beds. You can take the rest and build $1 million homes, do whatever you want, and make a buck. I just don't know how the taxpayer in Wellfleet is going to afford this going forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen. Just a quick note here. It is 7:30, and we still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I think at this point we might want to look at combining. Tom, what do you think? Combining some of the.
Well, you could combine, or we could, up to the committee, certainly, we could continue on as you are and have a second night after town meeting, just to continue this. There'll be more discussion at town meeting, because there's the 3 articles on the town meeting.
Oh.
Or you can abbreviate each topic area to a timetable. But I'm not sure that's going to effectuate allowing everyone to get their voice in, and I think.
Well, I think at this point the smart way to move would be to just let people address whichever one of these they care to when they come up.
All right, so in regard to taxes, usually the local contribution to projects is from the CPA funds. Those do not affect your individual taxes by year. So, Wellfleet put money into Lawrence Hill for the CPA funds. Now we'll receive over I think it's over 140,000 a year in taxes from it. Overall, that property is generating taxes that previously were not being generated there. But in regard to the wastewater facility there, so because it was coupled with basically housing, affordable housing, we were able to get a $3 million grant from the state, and that covered the majority of the cost. There was still a town portion of the treatment facility that we had to cover, but we need to treat wastewater one way or the other, and if we can get the state to pick up, a good portion of it by including, housing, I mean, it seems like that's a solid win. So yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
John Cumbler, I'm a Wellfleet resident. I want to address a couple things. One is the character of Wellfleet, and I hear this and I keep thinking, has anyone ever driven around Wellfleet? What's happened to this town in the past 25 years? There are what I call single-family hotels up behind my house. We are filling up our town with McMansions. That's not the character we imagine when we say, let's protect our character. We're losing that character, and what is the essence of that character is community. It's people who live here, people who work here, people who are dedicated, spend their money here to this community. The more of those people who we can have living here, the better. If we build housing that's affordable for those people, we'll have a vibrant town. If we do not, we will have more McMansions, Our land will be filled up with bigger and bigger houses. Small single-family houses will be sold for market value, and because the market value is so high, it doesn't make sense to replace it with a similar size unit. The value is, the economics force you to build ever larger, ever more expensive houses because of the cost of the land keeps going up. So if we don't do something as a town and do something fairly radical, like building housing where we have land to do it, because there is, I mean, the other option is we can say, let's rezone the whole town so we can have houses on quarter-acre lots. You will not have a Wellfleet that you recognize that way, but you will meet the housing need. Or you can do what all conservation groups say, cluster houses, build dense cluster, leave space, green space around it. And it's not, if you have your individual little units on an acre land, or a half acre or a quarter acre, and those people then have their lawn and their garden, what you're losing is wild space, you're losing the diversity of fauna and flora that we presently have because we have fewer units on larger plots of land, which were dictated by the septic requirements in the past. What we can do now with a septic system is cluster housing, have a septic system in there, have green space around it, and still protect the essence of our town, which is people, normal, ordinary, working people. And someone said, what will they do in the wintertime? In the wintertime, has anyone ever tried to get a plumber in the winter? Have you tried to get a carpenter in the winter? Have you tried to get an electrician in the winter? There is a huge shortage of workers available in this town in the wintertime. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd just like to add something in there. From my own perspective, as somebody who spent a long time in the trades, I would not have been able to operate as I was operating out of an apartment. I operated a business. I operated a business servicing restaurant equipment, doing HVAC, oil burners, generators, and stuff like that. I would have had to have had a separate facility, and there's some question as to whether I would have been able to afford that. So it's not just a matter of people wanting their own lawns and stuff like that. That's where this balance comes in. We have to consider these things. In my opinion. Go ahead.
We also could have a moratorium on building in this town.
Yep.
We don't need to keep giving permits for developers and people building 5,000 square foot houses.
If I could add.
Yeah, go ahead, Sheila.
You know, I tend to see the same thing that Mr. Kumbler sees, and you know, Eastham did zoning where they restricted the sizes of houses. And because they saw that there were neighborhoods, they were 1950 neighborhoods, and somebody bought a lot, tore it down, built a big house, and the domino effect starts. A lot of people said, how can you tell somebody how big they can build their house? Who are you? Well, it's called zoning. And zoning laws can change, and you can restrict the size of houses. I have a lot to say here, and I know Brian is going to be up, and a lot of people are standing and waiting to speak. But just a week ago or so, we had Andy Gottlieb. I know that he was quoted here saying density, and he does agree that it's density, but he was pointing out that there's really about 4% of land when you take out the joint Cape Cod base and you take out the seashore. There's about 4% land Cape-wide to build. Everything abuts water and protected areas. And for me, I think that we should think about what are we and who are we? What is this community? It is the environment. And the environment is the economy here. People travel a long way, and you know, my parents had a house, a little tiny cottage you could build for $20,000 $22,000, you could buy for $22,000 back in the day and in the 70s. Yarmouth was a charming, beautiful little place, and it became so overdeveloped. We started vacationing. It was a free vacation for us, but we started renting out here. This is when I was married. And I was like, oh my God, this is even better than what Yarmouth was. I mean, this is really what it looked like, or close to it. I mean, I wasn't here 100 years ago. I know it was totally different. But, you know, a few points that Andy pointed out was the more you cut into contiguous forest, and this was also on a fire discussion I had in Truro with Dave Carey, who was the head of the fire division at the National Seashore. The more you cut into the forest land, you're weakening it and you're making it more prone to fire. And we have one road out. We have a water issue. Our water changes, and I'm not saying we have a single source aquifer, everyone knows it. There's 15 towns now going to put several sewer systems discharging into that water. So it's been treated. I have a friend who's a housing person, dear, like my sister. Oh, it's treated. Well, would you drink the treated water before it goes in the ground? No one will drink that water. It's not really drinkable, but it's okay because it's been somewhat treated. Now we're going to mix it in with our drinking water. We have very shallow lenses here. The way the water structure, we are all being fed off of lenses. We have shallow lenses. We have less water in those lenses. And over time, 50 years ago, people used to leave and they could recharge. And I just want to read a few statistics of what the world was like 50 years ago here in 1885. The summer temperatures in 1885 ranged from 56 to 78 degrees. The winter was 27 to 41. The humidity was average of 75. The annual precipitation was 42 inches over 120 days. That does not exist today. 50 years later, we are in a climate change crisis. We are not getting the water. We are in a drought situation now, and even if we do have a good rain, we have this rain and we have this snow, not all of it goes into the water table, and it's used very quickly. We had 2,002 people that lived here in 1985. We have over 3,500 now, so that's being drawn upon, on top of all of the other towns increasing their population. And in the summer, we had 14,470 people would come in the summer. That's now about 30 to 35,000 people that come here. So you put that many people on the road and you add all of the people who are going to be in Lawrence Road, the developments in Eastham, the developments in Orleans, and the unbelievable building that's going on in Provincetown. I grew up in South Boston. It's a city with a beach, and that's what Provincetown is becoming, a city with a beach. So there is also, just the other thing is our geology is totally different out here. We are a sand dune. We are totally a sand dune. So our lenses, we are up Cape, you have your lens, and then underneath the drinking water is bedrock, and under that is the ocean. Here, we have very shallow lenses, and then there's the water. So we are already buffing up against our water. So for me, and I think everybody in this room has good intention. Everybody wants to help somebody who doesn't have a home or a place to live. However, I think that we have to recognize that the environment is the economy here. And eventually, people will not come out here to buy our fish, to enjoy our beaches, because they won't be able to get to the beach. People are in lines at our beaches now. Our beaches are eroding. soon, and we have to face this fact, we might need Lawrence, we might need Maurice's or piece of it to swap with the seashore because we're going to lose Ocean Drive, especially at Whitecrest. It's already happening. They figure about 10 years. So I know that a lot of people don't want to hear this who are totally committed, but we have to recognize who and what we are out here and what are we going to be. Are we going to be just a suburb? Are we going to be Long Island, which is now also having that's also an aquifer, a single aquifer, and they're having trouble now after many years, but still, and many people. So to me, I would rather us promote ourselves as the people who know how to sustain, protect, and keep a special place special. And I think that it would be good for us to take a break and see how we absorb all these people that are already online. It's being built or it's been built. Give ourselves a pause and let's see how we handle it. Let's give it a year. You know what? When it's gone, and this Andy also said, once it's gone, it's gone. People can come and go. But once you build it, that beauty is gone, and you can't bring it back. And we can see that from what our forefathers did. They took away the natural forest. This is not the natural forest, and this is what people think is so magnificent. But we have to protect what we have for future. Are we going to be the last ones that see it like this? That's what my question. Is this going to be it for everybody? So that's my feeling on all of these things. And I've been waiting. I wanted everyone to have a chance, but I live here too, and I just thought I would put that out there.
So the entirety of the Cape is a glacial remnant. Nowhere is there bedrock that you can reach. The sand goes hundreds of feet.
The geology is a bit different.
Right, like, we're not going to have back and
I'm just
forth.
saying, there's a difference.
The overall, yeah, I mean, the Wellfleet's gone through cycles. You can go back and look. There was a population crash in the 1800s.
Can we please keep conversation in a room to the minimum?
Yep.
Thank you.
There was a population crash in the 1800s when some of the fisheries started collapsing. By the time it was, 1900, there was around 900 people left in town. Previously, it had been in the thousands, 2,000 to 3,000. So, and then, over time, it's come back up. I actually remember living here in the 80s, which, my colleague was not here for. It was really difficult in the 80s on the Cape. I don't know if anybody remembers it. Unemployment on the Cape was well over 20%, and it lasted for years. The Cape's recovery took much longer than the state as a whole. I remember the thing that my parents would give us when they had a smidgen of money was a couple cold root beers. That's still one of my favorite things to get in the middle of the summer. It was a nice, glass IBC root beer. We moved 5 or 6 times within 4 years. Luckily, I stayed in Wellfleet, which meant I could still stay at school and not have that disrupted as I was jumping, unlike some of these other ones where they're jumping around towns. And every year that they do that, if they have children, the children, if they can't get them to their previous school, they're entering a new school, they have to find new friends. And then by the time it was in the 90s, we were having a population boom. At the time, the entire reason that the Cape became a center for the arts was because the housing was cheap. It was cheap, and the artists would come here, and then we get, the artists that we all enjoy and love. But by the time I got to the elementary school, I think it was first grade. It was either first grade or kindergarten. They had already started the addition to it. And at the time, there were 2 classes per grade.
Yeah.
I always say this, there's 25 to 30 kids in a classroom. I mean, it is an entirely
Can we wrap
different
this up?
world today. And it really breaks my heart because, we had, having that many kids, we would run around town everywhere, and that's getting lost.
Yep.
Okay. I really want to hear more from the public.
I will say it's a tough act to follow, Sheila. Brian Stern, I have 2 comments. One is, from the very beginning, I have advocated that we look at variable opportunities, variable options. One of them I heard today was 100 units. Maybe we look at 100 units. Maybe we look at 175 units. Maybe we look at 225 units, including summer workforce. But to go out with only one plan, and that's all that was ever developed was one plan, because I've heard, we don't know what it is. We don't know the costs. We don't know how to do it. So how are we going to vote on something if we don't know what it is? You're going to build a house and not have a floor plan? You're going to buy a car and not know how many gears it has? That's where we are. We really are not in a position to move forward. We need to go forward with an RFP, because I'm in favor of housing. And we need to go out and get RFPs and come back in, but we don't know what it is. How do we figure out what the best plan is until we know what it is? That's point number 1. Second point I wanted to talk about, which no one has brought up yet, was the issue of parking. And I am very concerned that I heard today that someone called it condemning people to the perfect hell. And that's what I think we're doing. If you give somebody 1 parking space, a family of 4, 1 parking space, and you're expecting that family to function appropriately on the Cape, okay, you have, maybe the person is, again, maybe they're a plumber, and they need a second parking space for their truck, and then the kids get sick, or having 1 parking space, to me, is a non-starter. All this other stuff, what we need to think about is families and people are living in this community, and to limit them with all these other factors on top of forcing someone to take busing. To me, it's a city mentality. It's not a person's mentality. It's something that really hurts my heart to think that that's what we're willing to do. So, thank you.
So, in the plan, it's not 1 space per unit. The smallest units, which are 1 bedroom, in the plan at least, are one space. But for the larger ones, there's more. The committee's talked about additional parking that may be needed for tradespeople. These are things that, are things that we'll have to monitor as we go through. We'll have some good data on the utilization of parking at Lawrence Hill after everybody's in there. We can adjust things then. The other element is so car ownership in lower income households tends to be lower than those at higher incomes. There's also, seniors who may no longer necessarily have a car themselves. It's not necessarily one size, but we definitely, Elaine McElroy, I wish she was here. I remember her saying that, the most successful housing developments that she's seen are the ones that have provided enough parking for the residents there. And that's obviously a priority. So I just want to clarify that.
Okay. Go ahead.
Oh, hi. I'm Mary Ellen Manning. Thank you for giving me a chance to speak. I just want to say thank you to all the Maurice's Campground Planning Committee for working on this. I'm really sorry that this has been such a divisive topic in Wellfleet, and I think that we can all agree that we're here tonight because we all love our town, and we want to see what's best for it. And I listened carefully to what Sheila Lyons said, and I also agree that the environment needs to be protected. But I would have to say that I don't think we're on the verge of becoming Long Island for developing Maurice's Campground. I think this is the last best chance we have as a town to really address our housing crises. I think some people before me really spoke eloquently, including David Mead Fox, about The fact that density is our friend, some fellow online said that, and we can create a very attractive, moderately dense village environment that will address the housing needs of many people. And one problem is there's been a lot of misinformation spread by people, including, sadly, Tim Sayre, who's on the committee, because it's simply not true that we're going to be housing the entire state.
I will, excuse me, but I
Excuse me,
said that the housing would be available to anybody in this state. I didn't say we'd house the entire state.
Well, I think we can see by the housing results thus far at Lawrence Hill that we really are addressing local housing. There's going to be 11 Wellfleet residents, an additional 7 from the Outer Cape for a total of 17. And then when you add 10 from the Cape Cod towns at large, that's 27 families. And that
34 so far with 12 units not.
well, anyways, it's making we are addressing the local needs. And the other thing that's been very concerning to me is that outside agitators, one of whom we have right here, Eric Schwab.
I said at the outset of this meeting that we will not tolerate casting aspersions or questioning people's motives. And I mean to stick to that. Thank you.
Okay. Well, anyways, I didn't mean to upset you, but it's the truth. Excuse me? Anyway. Anyways, I'd like to, for me, the affordable housing issue is personal. But for the grace of God, go any of us. My family was helped directly by affordable housing. My father worked at the Pentagon for the Judge Advocate General Corps as an Army lawyer. He also worked at the Department of Justice with Robert Kennedy. And when we moved to the Berkshires when I was 6 years old, and after my father lost a congressional race, he went into what I think was a deep depression. And so things became very difficult for my family, and we had to sell our home, and my father was the longtime counsel in the Pittsfield Housing Authority, and we moved into affordable housing. And I'll tell you, I myself had preconceived notions about it. You know, the first Christmas we were there, my mother said that we were invited to a Christmas party at the community center. And she asked me if I was going, and I said, Mom, I'm not going to be seen with those people. And to be honest with you, I was 17 years old, and I didn't even know who those people were. The day came and went, and I said, how was the party? And my mom said, it was great. Your sister won a bike. And I said, well, that's wonderful.
Excuse me, we're well past the 3-minute mark, and there's a lot of other people who would like
I'm
to
sorry.
speak.
It's a great story.
May I just finish? The bottom line is that it's a misconception that more crime is going to be coming with affordable housing. It's going to help a lot of people. A lot of people have said that online, but it's been said online.
Okay.
We're not going to address stuff that's been said online. This is a meeting for the people that are here.
Okay. Okay, well,
Please keep it on topic.
I'm a great supporter. I think that the village density is the way to go. I think it's going to help a lot of people, a lot of local people included, and I'm all for it. So I hope you support it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Chris, before you speak, the point that you made at the very end could easily have been made without casting anybody's motives into aspersion. I'm well aware that there are people here who don't live here. My priority is to have people that live here and are directly affected by this to speak. But there's no reason to question people's motives. And with that, go ahead, Chris.
Chris Merle. I live in Wellfleet my whole life, except I moved from Provincetown beginning of 5th grade. And so I've been here my whole life besides that. My mother, we were always on Section 8 housing because my father had a drug problem and didn't take care of us. I appreciate that, but we were never in any type of a housing community. We were always in single apartments or single homes or like that. I do believe that there's a housing need, but I think the density is just too high. And I understand that that's the only way to make it lucrative for a developer. But when we purchased Maurice's Campground, one of the things that we purchased it for is because we were worried about a developer overdeveloping it. Now we're overdeveloping it. And so I'm wondering, and I'd like to go into a couple other things because I'm probably not going to get back up here. You said we could move into other topics, but is LIHTC funding the only model that you would really seriously entertain, and is that where the plan is going now?
It's not the only one.
Is that where the plan is going now?
It is, it's the easiest to do at this point in terms of the level of funding. That's true.
What is the plan that you've proposed, the pedal and/or the loop? What does that really look like for anything else besides LIHTC money? I want you to answer the question seriously. My daughter's been trying to get answers out of you for weeks now, and you've been dodging her. So I just want you to answer the question. What is LIHTC funding the only way that you really feel that this is going to go forward?
So we're looking at a variety of things in terms of the attainable housing and home ownership, which is the one that we're most concerned about in terms of the availability of subsidy. The state has had a program called Commonwealth Builders that was only available to the gateway cities, and that money is exhausted now. Our hope is that the state will recapitalize that and allow the seasonal communities to have access to it. And so we're looking at what possibilities there might be on that score. It's, and that's part of what the developers got to help us do, is figure that out. We're not the developers.
So before, through you to Ryan, he had mentioned the RFP. Is the RFP being broken up into different sections of the Maurice's campground? Because you said it was going to be done in stages. So I'm curious. Or you said you were going to put out multiple RFPs?
I think Jeff or Carl are best to answer that.
Well, you were the one talking about the RFP and how many we were going to put out there.
So Jeff and Carl have put in the most amount of work into the current draft of an RFP. We're not looking at issuing a draft for the development of the campground right now. We're looking for help in terms of, I see Jeff with his hands up. He can describe it better than I can.
Jeff, would you like to answer that?
Sure. Thank you very much. So first, to the first point you're making, Chris, in the slide that Carl put up, half the housing is to be at levels that are above LIHTC levels. So our goal is that half of the housing at Maurice's will not be LIHTC. That's what the zoning overlay is going to say, and that's what we're trying to achieve. Carl's point was that second half is hard to achieve. We want to hire a consultant, which we have not done yet, and we haven't even put the RFP yet, to help us analyze the financial feasibility of many different alternatives for this site. But our goals are what Carl's slide showed. And we hope that we will go out into the marketplace with things that will attract developers to all segments of this housing. And whether we do that all at once, whether we reserve pieces, these are all questions that are ahead of us. I think the principle that's been articulated in the master plan, and a lot of people have spoken in favor of tonight, is to create a village center feeling to the development with sufficient density to do the infrastructure that we need to do that can help the development plus the neighborhood reduce its emissions to the harbor and other benefits. Traffic, we can hopefully address traffic issues too. But this is all ahead of us. Our goal is not to do all LIHTC housing. That's not what the plan says, and that's not what the zoning, which we're working on, which has been discussed at many of our public meetings, is aimed at. We're not quite done with that process yet with the zoning overlay, and we haven't even begun the process yet to look for a consultant to help us figure out how to go out into the marketplace with these various elements. So that's where we are now.
Thank you. How many single-family homes attainable are on the plan as proposed now?
We don't have a plan. We have the master plan, which is really checking. So the role of the master plan is to figure out, here's a site. What are we going to build? In the first part of that, it was just coming up with some vision for what it was. And that was this idea of village model. And then the planners looked at the constraints of the site and the opportunities that the site provided, and then looked, as was said repeatedly here, we're trying to maximize the affordable housing. And so they were trying to find out what's the maximum number of units we can put on the site, given these constraints, given these opportunities, and that's what the plan is. Now, it's not a blueprint, it is a framework. And so when we go out eventually for a developer, the developer is going to come back to us with what they can do, what their idea is about this, what the market will bear, what kind of resources are out there. So, everyone is sort of assuming that the plan is a blueprint, and that's what we're definitely going to have. That's what we're trying to get, but we don't know how it's going to work out. And the RFP that Ryan was talking about, that we've prepared, is an RFP not for a developer. It's for a development consultant to help us figure out development strategy, how to phase it, if it should be phased, is there one master developer and then some subsidiary developers? In other words, different developers develop different portions of it. We're trying to figure it out. Everyone expects that we have all the answers at this point. We don't. But we do know that we're trying to address the housing problem as we understand it, which is pretty significant. We're losing lots of young people, and it's been happening over decades. And that's the workforce that this town needs. The average age in the town is going up, and the number of children is going down. And we have to somehow address that. This is a program, we're not going to turn any earth for a number of years, and then it's going to be at least 10 years developing this over phases. So we're trying to figure all that out.
Okay. The other thing is, when we bought the land, it was stated in the summary that we were trying to, make housing for fishermen, for first responders, for seasonal employees were a big one. In any type of, I watched your meetings for the last year. At one of your meetings, I think it was Jay Coburn from the CDP said there is no business model to date that will fund seasonal housing. And I'll look at you, Josh, because you said you would never support a plan that didn't have seasonal housing. So, can you explain that? How are we going to make seasonal workforce housing, being as there's no funding model whatsoever, being as that's what we bought the land for? And also, we've already left out the shell fishermen, we left out the carpenters, they got to go somewhere else. The health workers, there's a missing middle as far as the income levels.
Yeah.
So either you make too much or you make too little. And a lot of the people who already live here in the community are in that middle category. They make too much to move into Maurice's, even though you say it's going to help the local people. I don't believe it is, unless we really, get crafty in what we're doing here. And as far as a modular home, I put in a 1,600 square foot modular home at my home, ADU, two-bedroom apartments. In the basement, I have a full basement, 10-foot high ceilings, and a shop. I have an office. I have 2 bathrooms down there, and I have huge retaining walls and all kinds of stuff. I put in a new septic for that, and I'm all in at $450,000. So, and I'm renting affordably. And I also have 3 units in Eastham, which I've been renting affordably for the last 25 years to year-round people. So, I'm all for affordable. The new place I built is also energy efficient. It's got solar panels on it. It's got mini splits. It's got radiant heat in the basement. And I'm all in at $450,000. So I think that whatever you say it was, $900,000 per apartment at Lawrence Hill, I think we're having these builders, it's crazy. Someone has to come in and grab this and make something that makes sense for the community. Have people who are actually making money in the community, paying into the tax force, single-family homes, whether you put 50 of them, 100 of them, whatever you do it in stages. But apartments where they don't have parking spots, they can't have a work truck, they can't have shellfish gear. The first responders are not going to want to live in apartments with low-income people. I hate to tell you. Your cops are not going to move in there. Your firefighters aren't going to move in there. It's just not going to happen. They're not going to be able to move in there, income qualified. So I just wonder, my wife put together basically just asking you to put a pause on until you see what happens in the surrounding communities that are doing these things. She got almost 400 names in a week in her spare time. I never saw anyone yet really take that to, and that's 400 residents. So of Wellfleet. I never saw anyone take that to effect yet. The only thing I saw was an article that's going forward to either approve or disapprove the plan. And that's it. But there hasn't, and anyone that's talked about those 400 people, 375 people, and more people wanted to sign on after that, she got to sign on. It's like that to me, it's more people than we have here. It's more people than are online right now, and I'll say the last thing I'll say is I feel that I'm part of the problem because I went to the scoping meetings and me being a cheap person, right? Oh, and by the way, on the $450,000, I made some mistakes too in building. So I'm not any perfect person as far as it goes. But I was at the scoping meetings. I said I wanted the biggest bang for our buck. I want to fill that place up with, whatever we need to help our local housing needs. I didn't realize that that was going to be for the whole state. In my opinion, we should only be helping people from Provincetown to Brewster, which is our school area. And as far as the 70% at Lawrence Hill, when everything gets out of that, and then after those people move out, that local preference is gone. It goes back into the lottery, and so those are things that are going to be moving. The 70%, once it shakes out, you'll probably find out we're at about 50%. And then when people move out, we're going to go back into it's open to everyone again. So these are all things that, sound good, but they're not real. The numbers aren't real. When you shake them out, they're not real. And I just hope that the town would, looks at this, and I hope they show up at town meeting to put a pause. I'm not saying don't have affordable, attainable housing. I'm saying don't do it at this density, and let's scale it and make it fit the local community, not the surrounding communities everywhere else. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Linda, I'm going to, there's somebody been waiting online for a minute.
Mark?
Mark, you want to unmute?
Yep. Hi, this is Mark Spiegel on Sea Pine Road in South Wellfleet. I'm in favor of affordable and attainable housing that meets the needs of Wellfleet. On March 21st, 2023, at a joint meeting of the Select Board and Planning Board, the current housing production plan was unanimously approved. At a later date, this plan would have been filed and approved with the Massachusetts Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. A housing production plan is a standardized approach to determine the affordable housing needs of cities and towns in Massachusetts. It was prepared by and presented at the joint meeting by professional consultants hired by the town. The housing production plan is intended to guide local decision-making to make certain that any new development aligns with the documented needs of the community. A comparison of the housing production plan and Maurice's master plan shows a significant disconnect. On page 8 of the housing production plan, the consultant provided a definitive conclusion of Wellfleet's affordable housing needs. The housing production plan is a 130-page report that provides support for the definitive conclusions reached. The housing production plan concluded that Wellfleet needs an additional 217 affordable ownership units and 62 affordable rental units. The Maurice's master plan calls for 75 affordable ownership units and 175 affordable rental units. This is not considering the seasonal units contemplated. The current plan is more than a complete inverse of the housing production plan. When you compare the Maurice's master plan with the housing production plan, it creates an undersupply of 142 ownership units and an oversupply of 113 rental units. According to the housing production plan, a full 78% of our affordable development efforts should be focused on affordable ownership opportunities. Maurice's master plan is at 30%. This disconnect is significant and cannot be ignored. The housing production plan also addresses much-needed housing for the missing middle, while Maurice's master plan focuses more on deeply affordable units as priority over the missing middle workforce needs. The housing production plan also addresses the shellfish community needs that are missing from the master plan. This is a policy alignment issue, not a political issue. Maurice's master plan should be operationalizing the housing production plan, not contradicting it. If this had happened, many of the issues raised tonight would have been resolved without debate. I reviewed the minutes of the Maurice's Planning Committee for 2023 and the beginning of 2024 when the process was already well underway. On March 22nd, 2023, the chair advised the committee that they should all review the housing production plan that was adopted by the town the night before. On April 12th, 2023, it was stated in the minutes that two of the members of the committee would be making a presentation on the housing production plan at a future meeting. That never occurred. According to the meeting minutes, the housing production plan was never formally discussed by the committee or taken into consideration in the planning process. My question through the chair is, why were the community needs documented in the housing production plan not used as the guiding principle in the development of Maurice's master plan? And what corrective actions do you propose to properly align Maurice's master plan with the housing production plan? Thank you.
I think it's a very good question, and is there anyone who...
So I think we did have a presentation on the housing production plan. 2023 was a while ago, and things kind of blend after a while.
Not in the minutes.
I would need to double check the agendas and make sure if it was or not. At least when it comes to the numbers in the housing production plan, it does say for that number for affordable ownership. However, it says 140 of those are extremely low income, which is 30% AMI or less. And the other issue is largely around funding sources. As I said, I wish there were more funding sources available for ownership, but you know, sometimes you can only get so far with funding, and you know that people just need to realize that it's really difficult, and it's just a challenge. A lot of things are dictated by funding sources, whether or not you know we necessarily agree with them or not. Sometimes it's good to take the 80% solution rather than getting the one that you absolutely want, but you actually can't. You don't have a way of actually making it happen. So,
Linda?
Thank you. Linda Schuster. I live on Pine Street down Payne Hollow. I've been in this line a long time here tonight, and when I started way back then, I had all these things to say, many of which first Mr. Sayre said, but then I had a few more things to say, and then Ms. Lyons said those. A couple more things, and Mr. Stern stepped up and expressed those, and then Mr. Merle took almost my last remaining point. So I don't want to take up any more time, but I do just want to throw two things out there just to have them in the minutes for people to keep in their minds. One is senior housing. Put that out there for those of us who are been living here a long time and aging and maybe looking for some communal type of housing services. It's just something to think and to keep in mind when we're thinking about these projects. And the other is, and it's a question, but I don't know if it's going to get answered tonight, is as people, if we go with the affordable housing, what happens when people settle, do better, make more, and no longer qualify for those housings? Then it's not a model that encourages people to
Mr. Chairman,
succeed financially.
I think I can answer the last part of that.
All right.
My work with the Greenfield Housing Authority, we would have voucher holders either in our developments or in private homes that would exceed the income limits that are allowed. They could stay in the apartment, but they would pay full rent and not get the subsidy. I had a number of people that got like $7 subsidies, okay, because they were up that high. The other thing that happens with that, the little ancillary, but people will come in, not so much here based on the numbers I've heard on Lawrence Road. You know, we got a pretty heavy local or at least regional attendance there, or residency. But what we would find is people would take the voucher to Franklin, thinking it was Franklin, Mass., and it was Franklin County. And once they got out there, they knew there wasn't a Walmart, there wasn't a bus system, there wasn't this, there was no place to work. They would use that voucher for the year, because you had to stay in the place of the year, and they would port that, they would port that to another available unit closer to where they were. That, you're not going to see that much of that here, just based on the numbers that we've seen, but those are some of the oddities that come up with public housing vouchers.
Yeah, go ahead.
The experience I have with housing where people are paying a percent of their income is exactly what Tom is saying. In addition, one of the things that we've talked a lot about is deed restricted ownership, so that if there is ownership of a house that somebody gets in at, a very below market rate for owning that house, they can't then turn around and sell it at market rate. So it stays in the attainable section of people being able to afford it. So that, do you understand what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So deed restricted ownership, along with what Tom is saying, is what happens in these kinds of housing developments.
Yeah, the units I was discussing weren't on public lands. They were
Right.
privately held.
And then Carl and Jeff have talked extensively about senior housing. I don't know if they would want to, I know that's an interest.
Emily Achtenberg has her hand up, too. Emily?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to this point about the housing production plan. The housing production plan has a number of different estimates of need, but it bases them basically on the number of cost-burdened households in town that is paying more than 30% of their income for rent or ownership. And it does say that 82% of those cost-burdened households are low or moderate income, not higher than that. Yes, most of them are homeowners, and that's because there's virtually no rental housing in Wellfleet. So that's not a surprise. But the main point, if you go back to the slide that Carl showed, is that the cost-burdened households are only one component of the need that we have been looking at. And in that respect, the housing production plan, I would argue, is short-sighted and not a complete look at the many different categories of households, both in Wellfleet, living and also working in Wellfleet, that are not cost-burdened but need housing, such as homeowners wanting to downsize, elderly homeowners, such as households who are living on short-term leases who are vulnerable every summer, such as doubled-up households. Some people in this room have spoken about being in that situation tonight, such as people who are commuting long distances to work in Wellfleet but can't live here, and people who want to be in the job market here to fill much-needed vacancies who can't afford to live here. So that's the big picture that we are looking at that goes beyond the narrow scope of the housing production plan and trying to address those needs.
Thank you. Jeffrey Sachs?
Yeah, I wanted to just make two quick comments. First, in the slide that Carl showed about who we are seeking to serve, the 20% of the units, that's 50 units at Maurice's, could serve unmet needs in the town. We're not proposing to put any income limits on that whatsoever. That could be senior housing, that could be market rate housing, that could be whatever people think we need as the development evolves. And I think it's fabulous that Chris can do one of these for $450,000. He should put a proposal together and show what it looks like, and we can fit that into this. The zoning we're working on is an umbrella that can cover a lot of different types of housing, and that's what we want to happen at Maurice's.
Michael?
Yep, Michael DeVasto, Wellfleet resident. I grew up here. I served on the select board for 6 years and also on the Affordable Housing Trust for 5. And I serve on the Board of Health. I'm also a shell fisherman in town. And I'm just speaking here as a resident. And I wrote it down so I could stay succinct and not drift. Wellfleet's housing crisis is no longer theoretical. It's shaping who can live here, who must leave, and whether the town can sustain itself as a year-round community. The question is not whether aquaculture farmers, tradespeople, or other working residents need support. They absolutely do. The question is how best to provide that support without undercutting the one opportunity Wellfleet has to make a meaningful impact on its housing crisis. If the goal is to help aquaculture farmers purchase single-family homes, there are more appropriate and effective tools to do that: down payment assistance, year-round deed restrictions, community land trusts, targeted subsidies, and financing programs that offset land and construction costs. Those tools allow people to buy homes throughout the town without dedicating an entire housing development to one occupation or one housing type. Similarly, the town should be looking seriously at industrial or mixed-use areas where businesses can operate appropriately, and at ensuring adequate parking and flexibility in residential developments so tradespeople can run small home occupations. These needs are real, but they should not drive the design of a housing site whose primary purpose is to house people. Maurice's Campground was purchased because of the scale of impact it can make. It is the only site in Wellfleet capable of producing enough housing to create turnover, especially in year-round rental housing, which is where the crisis is most acute. The master plan also includes 75 homeownership opportunities, 50 of which are for attainable homes for the missing middle. Households who earn too much to qualify for traditional affordable housing, but far too little to compete in today's market. Right now, it is nearly impossible for young people, especially those returning from college, to move back to Wellfleet without living with their parents. Housing insecurity forces people to delay starting families or leave town entirely, which is exactly what has been happening for years. Homeownership opportunities at Maurice's matter, but so do rental opportunities. Not everyone is in a position to buy a home, and subsidized ownership often comes with equity restrictions that limit mobility. A development focused only on attainable ownership is a Band-Aid, not a solution. In my view, the focus should be on where the plan falls short, by ensuring that more units are available for higher AMI households and market rate rentals. Maurice's does not need to be perfect, and it does not need to be the only solution, but it does need to deliver a meaningful return on the town's investment in terms of housing units and long-term stability. We need young people to move here again. We need teachers, EMTs, service workers, and small business employees to be able to live here year-round. We need enough housing stock so that people are not one lost lease away from leaving town. If Maurice is going to fulfill its purpose, the focus must remain on housing at scale, not narrowing the site's impact only to serve a small subset of needs. And I'll just make one more comment. When people moved here through the 80s and 90s, which many of my friends' parents did, they became residents of this town and thus became locals of this town. And when people move into Lawrence Road and become a resident of this town, they will also be locals. And we are losing people who come here and try to live here. I've had several employees come and get short-term housing situations and then have to leave. I had one have to move back to New Orleans because she just couldn't find anywhere to rent. I mean, she just wants to rent a place. She's not in a position to buy something right now. And that's happening all the time. I mean, we don't even see the need of the people who attempt to live in this town and eventually move because there's no other choice. I actually have another former employee that's in a similar situation right now, just going to have to leave town because she's losing her rental. So rentals matter, and we do need to make sure that it is attainable for all income brackets, and part of what I want to really emphasize is that this is a mixed income development. It's not low income housing development. It's a mixed income housing development, and I don't think it does enough for higher income rentals. But it was brought up about the low income housing tax credits. That's one component, but any mixed income housing development has to attain housing funding from all different sorts of different sources, including bonding stuff, or in the case of Lawrence Road, the higher income units that go up to 120% AMI, I think, they had to come up with that money themselves out of their own bonding in order to make that work. So it's not going to be all low income tax credits, but you do need to use that for those units that are 30% AMI, because people can't afford that rent unless we have that tax credit.
Thank you, Mike.
I'm short. Hi, I'm Mary Ellen Dwyer, and I'll say what I said the last time. First of all, I'm grateful to be a part of a democracy where we can speak out openly in our country right now. This is a lovely freedom to celebrate, and I want to acknowledge that. I also want to acknowledge everybody on the committee, those that have gone off, like Sharon Rule-Auger, and everyone that has worked hard. My neighbor Roland, my friend Farouk. I appreciate everybody's hard work. I know this is not easy. It can be divisive. I do want to address what was said earlier. So many points, so I don't have been made. It's not much I have to say now. That it was said that you've only heard what we don't want, and I don't agree with that. I have said from the very first, I have gone to every meeting, I've sat over the maps, I have said over and over and over again, I'd like to see 100 units, 100, whatever they are, 50 townhouses that are double, 100 small homes. I have said over and over again that that is what I want. It's not what I don't want. I am in a butter. And I have concerns. You're talking now, I hear, let me just say this, a couple people left, but how many in the room are abutters? We don't want to be NIMBYs, but it is our backyard. So I think we want to hear Lawrence Road went up really, really quickly. I know there were a couple of neighbors, not a lot. We want to know if it's 10 years. I hear you today going 10 years. I'm like, oh my God, it's going to be so noisy. I want to know what you're going to do for the abutters. Are you going to have sound screens that get put up? What are you going to do in the different phases? I think that's fair to ask. I'm a social worker. I am all for the housing. I just want to know what it's going to be like also to live with this for 10 years, because Lawrence Hill did not take that long. This is, if it goes up at the way it's proposed, it's going to take a long time. I remember somebody in Studio G said to me in the very first meeting, well, can you see the campers? And I said, uh-huh. I said, they're 11 feet. They don't bother me. They're cute. They have little lights on. These are going to be large buildings. I have spoken to Farouk about my concerns about all of the parking and the lights that are going to come in. I have 3 dogs. They're going to bark every time, cars are moving, and I know that you're addressing the parking and the lights and things like that. But I do want, as abutters, I think it's fair to say, how are you going to consider what it's going to be like up for us for the next 10 years? Thank you.
Helen, the person behind, you've already had...
Excuse me, I would have addressed what I need to address now as a water commissioner. I would have done it if the agenda had been, if you had been keeping to the order of the agenda. I'm not reproaching you, but that's the only reason I'm standing up.
Okay.
Okay?
Right.
I apologize. Sheila Lyons gave you a lot of good facts about water. Yesterday, from the health department, I asked how many, what is the public well that is now at Maurice's restricted to? And the number is 600 people. Now, you understand 1 bedroom is considered for 2 people. And all that water, and there's a redundant well there, which is required, excuse my voice. There's a redundant well as required by the DEP. So all that water is now permitted by the DEP to be taken from that parcel, not from the next town. I haven't seen the contract that was signed by the water commissioners and the town last year with Eastham to get water at how many gallons per day, I'm not sure. But one of the things that I feel should absolutely be pinned down and known by everybody before they vote on this is, how much water would that all take? And the committee has done incredibly valuable research for all of us, right? It's not nothing. But that and the fact that we don't know how many seasonal workers are now being housed there, the fact that you don't have that number for the last couple of years is kind of shocking to me, because they are an essential part of our community. We need them. Not all businesses can afford to house them. So I think this remarkable job that the committee's done for quite a few years now needs to continue a bit more before we look at it, particularly with regard to the water issue. Personally, from everything I know, I used to be a water commissioner in the early 2000s. I care about it. I've read a lot about it. I've learned a lot more since I got reappointed. We're about to have 2 new members, and then we can start meeting again as water commissioners. I think that that should have been almost the first thing that was considered. How much water do you need for what you're thinking about? And what is a reasonable way to provide it? And can it be done from the parcel itself so we don't have to get into the kind of thing that Truro and Provincetown have to do, where 2 municipalities are sharing the same source? I know a lot about that, and I think it's to be avoided. So I hope that more will be known before we vote on that article, no matter how amorphous it is, not amorphous, but, you know, everybody, one is hearing that, no, we're not pinning it down here, but I think it would be better if there were some more facts known before it gets voted to go ahead. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Tim.
I can answer a couple of the questions that Helen asked. It's 50 million gallons a year that we've bought from East End. That we have the right to buy 50 million gallons a year, which is right around 137,000 gallons a day. We've already paid for the pipe, $850,000 to be installed, but we don't own the pipe. I believe the cutoff on that is they have to give us 180 days notice if they want to shut us down. Okay? It was originally 30 days, but I spoke against that at the select board meetings, and I believe we negotiated in 6 months on that. But 137, just shy of 137,000 gallons a day, and then the movie theater has a very similar contract with East Ham, and I believe their contract allows 50 million gallons a year also.
In terms of the seasonal workers, so we've talked to each of the individual operators, including the Gauthiers, before we bought it. The numbers have changed from year to year based on, you know, the estimates. There's, you know, I would say that they varied greatly in the amount that they estimated. Some were high, some were low. You know, it is, some of it had to do with, you know, basically the time. Specifically, you know, we were still in basically COVID. And, you know, it kind of created a break in the data. But then you have, you know, private businesses that own a trailer, or sometimes it's the owner of the business that owns the trailer. And they'll house workers there. There's a handful that the campground itself houses. So it really varies, and it is kind of difficult to pin down. We haven't had staff to be able to do that. I'm looking forward to Ann's estimate of what's in there. In terms of the water supply, the plan is to discontinue the well so that we can install the septic treatment system. Currently, the well, you wouldn't be able to install it as it is today with the septics where they are. But, you know, so the plan is basically to discontinue that well and then install the septic treatment system, and basically, so.
Okay, we have 2 hands up on, yeah, go ahead, Josh.
Just a point of clarity to Mr. Sayre's point. The agreement with the town of Eastham is a maximum of 50 million gallons a year. That is not the expected use. And I need to refer to my notes because I had a conversation with someone about this issue last week. But my recollection is it would be well over a year for Eastham to discontinue service, and not the time frame that you articulated.
And respectfully, that's true. Like I said, I remember that it was 30 days originally. I thought we went with 6 months. I'll go with your year. And we are not required to buy the full amount of water. We have the right to take the full amount of water. We're also talking about hooking up the homes that are next to the campground. We're talking about possibly providing across the trailer park. There's been other talk of other areas. So at one point, we may come close to what is in the contract. But you are correct.
Certainly.
They won't use the full amount because when they did, and I'm going to call it a perk test, but it's not, it's called a mounding. They looked at 50,000 gallons a day, and they also looked at 120,000 gallons a day from the treatment plant because, you know, it may ramp up if we start adding all these other places to the water that we have available to us.
Certainly. And if I may, only because I had a very productive conversation with a gentleman that has his hand up, Mr. Schuster, who's being asked to be recognized.
Yeah, well, I wanted to go with Martha Rollman because she hasn't spoken yet.
That's fine.
Just so people are aware that that amount of gallons is specific to the parcel itself. Currently, there's no plans to necessarily hook up the neighbors. If it's something that the neighbors wanted, that option is there. It's always good to plan for possible future eventualities, so there's curb stops installed. The line goes to basically the Wellfleet Motel and Lodge. Ideally, Eastham would like to have another line running down West Road because that will create a loop and it makes it easier for them to maintain pressure in the system. But, you know, just currently, there's no necessarily plans to hook somebody up to Eastham's water supply. If they wanted to, it's available, it's an option.
Thank you. Martha Rollman?
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. So I wasn't sure if I could speak yet because it seemed like the subject had changed to wastewater and water. So I'm just going to read what I wrote, and it's largely about the water. I appreciate the Select Board setting this much-needed meeting up and allowing an opportunity for residents to ask the members of the Maurice's Planning Committee for answers to many questions that have been asked but remain unanswered. And I just want to say that there are a lot of terms also that are used to refer to this property that are kind of misleading. Mr. Sussman's presentation portrayed Maurice's campground as a brownfield, and this is not a brownfield. Brownfields are abandoned or underutilized commercial or industrial blighted properties. And there are box turtles and other wildlife here. It's bordered all around by critical habitat and connected to the Wellfleet Bay by the Silver Spring Brook. So I just want to, consider the site of this development. And I also just want to say that these new IA wastewater systems are, often used as a way to usher in high-density development. And I think the density mantra isn't taking into account unintended and compounded consequences and the impacts of accelerated development in environmentally sensitive areas that are not fully considered. And development begets more development, and that's a fact. But I just wanted to really take a look at the drinking water and ask about the intermunicipal water agreement for Maurice's. I watched the discussion at the October 17th, 2023 meeting about a need for a second IMA that could possibly include future expansion. I have not heard any more discussion about that, and I wondered if you can talk about whether that is there's still some plan to have a second IMA and what that agreement would include. There was also discussion at that meeting about an extension loop in the neighborhood, which you mentioned behind the drive-in, and the question about whether the service line coming to Maurice's would be able to provide adequate fire flow for such a large development. And then also there was discussion at that meeting about a number of items in the IMA, including Section 2.4, change in use, and Section 4.3, termination for convenience, which says either party may terminate the agreement for any reason or no reason within 180 days. I know the number of days was changed from 180 to 540 since that discussion. But there were also concerns that the planned development in North Eastham could potentially impact the agreement with Wellfleet in the future. And I also just want to say that I'm not a hydrogeologist, but I do have some background in natural resource planning, and I decided to take a look into the water agreement with Eastham because I wasn't hearing much discussion about it. And I know through the IMA, the town of Eastham has agreed to provide up to 50 million gallons a year to the planned development at Maurice's Campground, and there is also the separate agreement with the owner of the Wellfleet Cinema Complex to provide another 50 million gallons a year to that property. The public water supply extension that was approved by Mass DEP in 2023 would enable a number of adjacent parcels to connect to the water system. And I wanted to ask why there's a discrepancy between the stated purpose of the IMA, which states that it's for the sole purpose of supporting the current and proposed future residential and/or commercial uses at the property as 80 State Highway, and the stated purpose of the permit for the Wellfleet water extension, which states that it was put in place to provide water for a number of properties outside of the campground property with water quality issues. The water extension also lists a number of other residential and commercial properties that can tie into the system, including the motel and the residences on Springbrook Road and Village Lane and the Mass Audubon facility. But the IMA states that the water agreement is only for the Maurice's Campground property. And so I just think the fact that the IMA states that the agreement is for the sole purpose of providing water to the property at 80 State Highway, but that other properties are being planned to tie into the water system, raises questions for both Wellfleet and Eastham residents.
Okay, can we wrap this up?
Oh.
It's going.
Okay.
You've asked a number of questions, and I think it would be appropriate to ask for answers to those at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
Does anyone have an answer to the IMA issue? Or?
I'd have to go back and watch that meeting. It was it was a while ago. That would have been a select board meeting, right, Martha?
Yes.
Okay. So it was during Rich Waldo's tenure. The IMA is specific to 80 State Highway, which is the campground. I'm not sure how necessarily they would structure additional hookups for the other properties. You know, a lot of these questions are best asked to Eastham itself. You know, I'm curious about a few things myself, and I have a few things I'm meaning to follow up with them on. So, yeah, I think, you know, I can't really speak to Eastham's water system. That's something that town would need to speak to.
Thank you. Let's see, we have two people online who've already spoken, so I'm going to go with you first.
Hi, I'm David Holmstrom, South Wellfleet. Full disclosure, I grew up on welfare in a rent-controlled apartment in the South Bronx. So I am in favor of, you know, affordable housing. Definitely has made a big difference in my family. But I won't tell you my whole life story, as some people have done.
Hold the mic closer, David.
Okay. There's been a lot of things said here, and I hope I'm not the only person who was confused by them. So I'm going to ask a few questions or to try to clarify things for myself. Maybe it'll help some other people. One is about the density. Now, I think about density as people, not houses. Is it correct that there are currently over 600 people in the campground in the summer? That's what I've heard.
We don't really know.
Well, I see some nods there. Even if we built 250, that wouldn't be a significant increase in the number of people, would it? Okay. Well, year-round it definitely would be, but there aren't problems there. Year-round, we got nobody in town. Second, about the water sewage system. Am I correct in understanding that doing a sewer system like we did at Lawrence Hill, would offset the need for people to spend tens and tens and thousands of dollars to put in AT systems in the rest of Wellfleet?
I think I can give you something of an answer to that. The more area we sewer, such as Lawrence Hill or prospectively at Maurice's, is going to get us closer to the nitrogen numbers that are mandated by the state. And the closer we get to those, that's going to impact how large an area in town generally we have to sewer, and in turn, how many, if any, IA units we require if we go that route. That's nowhere near, we're nowhere near completion as far as the balance between the two that we're going to be doing. We're still working on, that's a work in progress, but
Right, well, all I can
the
say
closer
is...
we get to the numbers, the less requirement we will have in that area.
Yeah, well, all I can say is as a homeowner, the less requirement we have for that, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
I think we all could agree to that.
Third, there was a lot of discussion about income levels and percentages, but I'd like to see some numbers on that. Somebody said earlier that their, I think, relative made too much to live there. My understanding that the upper limit on this was well over $100,000. So I'm delighted that your relative's making that much, but that's a hell of a lot more than most town employees make, and I think it's a lot more than a lot of tradespeople make. So can somebody put a number on?
It depends on the family size.
Yeah,
So
right.
it's not a fixed number.
So let's say a family of 4.
I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I don't want to guess.
I think Ryan has numbers on
I
the
would have
30%.
to look them up, because the AMI charts typically don't go all the way up as well. But if it's a one-person household, just easier because it's just one person to describe. The area median income, if it's 28,000 at 30%, that would be like almost 90,000. And that would be 100%. And what we're proposing is up to 200%, which for that one.
So one person could make $180,000 and still qualify?
Yes.
All right. I just wanted to be clear about that. Well, no, but we're talking about for a room to live in this place.
Okay, can we, because there's a few more people, and then we have to start to wrap things up.
I had a question about, I know this isn't a complete plan, but I really haven't heard any feasible alternative. Tim tried to put one out, and I have a question about it. If we did what you did, what you suggested, namely sell individual lots so people could buy their houses, is there any legal way we could restrict that to Wellfleet residents?
Through the chair.
Yeah,
Absolutely. We can put deed restrictions on that would maintain that it's always affordable or always attainable on those deeds. And so it couldn't be sold at market rate. You would only, there is a slight rise in what it could go, but it's limited on how high the price can go. So yes, we can put deed restrictions.
So even in...
And it'll be year round.
That part is correct, but you can't.
Try and keep it orderly.
But if somebody did sell it, is there any way to make sure that they sell it to a Wellfleet person?
No, that would be illegal.
No.
So that's the same situation as people pricing out in the affordable housing? Okay.
Okay, just before we proceed, we're getting close to 9 o'clock. So I want to make sure, first of all, that people are heard who haven't been heard. Also, we have representatives of both of our public safety departments and our Department of Public Works who have been very patient, and I want to make sure that if there are any questions for them, that they get asked, because they... Could we please keep the conversation in the audience to a minimum? Thank you. So that those questions directed to them could be asked. They've been very patient in standing by. Okay. Who has not?
John Schuster is on
Okay, I thought he had. Okay, go ahead, John. You left on mute. There you go. I think. Oh. Oh.
Oh, put his hand down. Okay.
Right. You sure?
He's on mute.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Just having trouble with the unmute button. So I have questions about, the wastewater and the drinking water are all linked together. But I guess I have a whole bunch of questions related to the wastewater that have been out there for a while and haven't been answered. So I think I'm going to just start by reading those quickly. And this has to do with the mounding analysis that was done by Weston and Sampson. And first is, what is the explanation for the inconsistency between the wastewater mounding numbers contained in the final memo, the report, and those given to the MPC, to the committee on June 11th at its presentation? And what does the mounding analysis tell us about how the subsurface wastewater flow is expected to impact the domestic wells of the abutting residential properties on Springbrook Road and Village Lane? So what this means, this is relevant because in June, Frank gave his presentation, and the subsurface effluent mound extended right up to the borders of the property. And that was only based on 50,000 gallons per day. And then in the final presentation, those numbers had completely changed. Oh, also back in June, he asked about whether the abutting wells were going to be discontinued and whether they would be hooking into the East Dam water supply. And but then the concern went away in the final report. And then at the March 16th joint meeting, Frank Etchell from Weston and Sampson, he was asked about it, and he suggested that it wouldn't be a problem if wastewater effluent was recycled into the domestic wells. He mentioned something called tertiary treatment. So basically my question here then is it the plan for the Maurice's wastewater treatment system to be toilet to tap? Which is basically, I mean, I'm sure that it is, and it can be done. It's a more comprehensive and expensive, but as Sheila was saying, I mean, treated wastewater is not the same as toilet to tap. And also, what about the contaminants of emerging concern, like PFAS, the forever chemicals, and pharmaceutical residues, personal care products, and microplastic? All these things are in the wastewater as well, and they are not removed by the treatment. So then also at that March 16th meeting, Mr. Getchell mentioned for the first time that the treated effluent would recharge the aquifer. So at previous meetings, he had stated that the groundwater flow, this is the whole point of the analysis, was to map how the groundwater flows on the property. And it flows on site from the southeast to the northwest, or from lower right-hand corner up to the upper left-hand corner, which is the Stearns property. That's right where there's a pond there, and the brook runs through there. So is he basically saying that the wastewater is not going to end up in the marsh at the Wellfleet Bay Sanctuary? And what then is the rationale for nitrogen reduction if the wastewater doesn't end up in the bay? So these are just some of the questions I had about the wastewater, and also the cost. Basically at the town meeting, when the town voted to purchase the property, town was told that the developer would pay for the treatment system. And I think it's pretty clear that the town is going to be paying for the treatment system because it's an integral part of the nitrogen management plan. And I don't think that is something that the developer can pay for. But what size will the treatment system be? And who is going to be allowed to connect to it? How many gallons per day of effluent will be allocated to each user? Who's going to make these decisions and what criteria will be used? What system is in place to determine these allocations? And for commercial properties, including the drive-in cinema, the Wellfleet Motel, and Wellfleet Lodge, will their allocation be based on current use or will there be allowance for expansion? Who is going to bear the cost of building the treatment system? Who is going to be responsible for the cost of operating and maintaining it? So I know that's a lot, but these are the questions. I've sent these in to the select board in the past, and they're still waiting for answers. And I'm really asking these on behalf of everybody in the town because they're questions that need to be answered publicly. So thank you.
So centralized wastewater facilities, which basically it'll be a small one. If it serves more than a single property, it's hard to make it the responsibility of a single property owner to also treat the surrounding homes. But there's different ways that you can kind of model it. An early version of Lawrence Hill, and we don't know how it's going to all play out, but early version of Lawrence Hill had the developer paying for, I think, like 40% of the installation cost of the system. That changed over time. A lot of your questions are best answered by Frank Getchell. I'm not a hydrologist. But in terms of the total overall flow, we were assessing the property for 120,000 gallons. Maurice's will not need that much. So if you go by Title V design flow, Title V design flow is 110 gallons per bedroom. You can kind of figure around like 2 bedrooms well, we'll average around 2 bedrooms per unit because there will be single bedrooms and whatever else. So if it's 250, that's 500, and that's 55,000 gallons. However, there's been studies on what the actual water usage is in housing developments that was done by the Massachusetts Housing Partnership. And they found that the average was around 70 gallons per bedroom. So that would be around 35,000 gallons. The remainder of the capacity when you're assessing a site, to site a wastewater facility, it's best to assess it for as much as you think it might be able to hold, because you always want that what is the maximum in case the town were to decide to continue to expand the system. So basically the initial estimates is based on Title V design flow plus a little extra over that just to give it a margin of safety. But it's more than likely that it could be expanded to, some of the other surrounding areas if the town wanted to go that way. But those are all decisions to be made later. In terms of the wells, the issue, the initial concern was basically the theater property has public water supplies on it as well. Some of those wells were fairly close to Route 6. And so they were wondering about, where to place the various leach fields to kind of but ensure that, it didn't enter into the zone of contribution for those public water supplies. But the theater plans to discontinue those wells. In terms of private wells, that's definitely something to continue to monitor. Currently, I know, the cesspools, they typically discharge around 33 or 35 milligrams of nitrogen per liter. Essentially, a wastewater treatment facility is between 3 to 5. So Scott Horsley did an analysis.
We need to wrap this up.
All right. So Scott Horsley did an analysis of basically, the various scenarios in the nitrogen reduction that we would achieve. Even if we were to just treat or replace what is currently there with the development plus the more advanced treatment system, it would decrease the nitrogen flowing into the bay.
Okay, I'm going to go with only with people who have not had a chance to speak yet.
Jeff.
Would be two back in line.
Yeah.
Will be Jeff.
Jeff?
Jeff and, what's your vice name?
And then we have,
I might need to take that.
we have someone online.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, and Jeff?
Thank you.
Let's try and
Yeah.
keep it as concise as
I
possible.
will, yeah. Jeff Compricos, I'm a voter taxpayer living on Howland Lane. And I'm really glad I got called up front because I was afraid I'd be the most hated man in Wellfleet tonight, keeping everybody from their homes, being the last speaker. So a couple things. We rent homes in town here, a couple properties in town at below market rates. And so kind of like to feel that we're doing our part there. You know, the math is really kind of stunning here. I think, Sheila, you mentioned earlier 3,600 people. I think that's the current population. We're looking at an expansion of 200, 250 people, I understand, at Lawrence Road?
It's units.
Yeah. Units.
Oh,
So
excuse me, 200,
people,
Lawrence Road,
people,
yes, about
yeah,
200.
people. And then we get to Maurice's and what's been, you know, proposed for Maurice's, but it looks, I've heard numbers anywhere from 1,000 to 1,200 people. So you're talking about an expansion here in town, a rural, bucolic, I would argue Truro and Wellfleet are the last rural towns, kind of special places when you cross that line from Northeastham. You come into town, we're going from 3,600, could be 10 years from now, but up to close to 5,000. That's a really different town than what we've known, why we moved here, why we stay here, and Sheila, to your point, why people come here. We talked a lot about Lawrence Road. I'm interested in other higher density, newer neighborhoods. How are they doing? 2 miles down the road in Eastham, Northeastham, I think off of Brackett Road, there's a fairly high density development in there. What's the impact been on taxes, education, policing, fire, and needs? How's that gone over there? I mean, Lawrence Road is interesting, but I think we ought to take a look just down the street at the Village at Nauset. Drive-in, that's come up a couple times tonight. We all love the drive-in. I mean, I hope it's here for generations to come. Any number of people in town who may trace their origins to the drive-in. So a couple cousins come to mind. I own a 66 Chevy Impala, if you haven't seen it around town, big back seat. But, you know, what would happen if the drive-in were sold? And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's been pondered, but we can't get through from Northeastham into Wellfleet many days of the year now. They put up a median island for everybody to run into, and then in the state's wisdom, and then we're going to have tons of people potentially pouring out of Maurice's. So that's got to be looked at. I really don't have a problem getting a plumber, an electrician, a carpenter to come to my house. I don't know. I mean, Thor's sitting back here. He was back here. But what I've never understood in that argument is, so when people are making out the application for Maurice's, is there a line in there? Hi, I'm a plumber. I'm an electrician. I don't know. I mean, how do you screen for that? And would we screen? I mean, it's kind of I don't know. Finally, just wrapping up here. Now, to me, the most pressing problem, along with housing, is the sewering issue. But in sewering the town and bringing municipal water to the town, aren't we also planting the seeds to address some of the housing issues? In that, once you sewer, say, downtown, you can have an apartment up above XYZ store. I could put in maybe an ADU at my property on Howland Lane. And I'd really prefer to see that than a large-scale development packing everybody up on the Eastham line. I think that kind of organic housing made possible through sewering and watering the town is a really good solution. And I think if the board, if we took a fresh look at our regulations about what could be added onto existing dwellings, what could be put above, next to, aside, boy, a lot of people, I heard there were 430 people underhoused in Wellfleet. I would think that sewering and watering would open up a lot of opportunities for those folks. And thank you for the forum, and thank you for all the hard work that's gone into this issue.
Thank you.
So I think we'd all be devastated if the drive-in closed. So
You know, the population would probably
we can
fall
all
off.
agree on that, you know.
Go ahead.
My question is, has the planning board,
Oh,
and this-
by the way, who are you?
Terry Sayer,
Oh, okay.
hi guys, has the planning board and the select board met with the fire, with the police, with the DPW, with the planning board, all the other boards?
Through the chair.
Have they met?
Go ahead. Tom?
If I could, through the chair.
Yeah, sure.
The Maurice's Planning Committee folks have asked for a meeting with the department leaders. And we are going to set that up. I haven't had a department head meeting for 5 weeks now. Yeah, and so we're due for another, and they will be invited into that.
I mean, you're asking us at town meeting to vote on if we want a master plan, but we haven't even met with our local boards to find out what the impacts are going to be, to see what, what they have to say. Not only, they're going to they have housing issues to get employees, police and fire, and the way that this master plan is developed, they make too much money to fit in there.
That's not true.
It is very true. You can look at actually how I figured it out was myself at town meeting when I learned about AMI, because I had to learn about it. I took the annual report and I looked at everybody's salaries because it's listed in there. They will not qualify. A couple people might get lucky, but the average police officer, firefighter, make way too much money to get in there. And I've always advocated for we need our police and our fire. Matter of fact, it was when you came on board, Tom, that we were told with Maurice's that we needed to buy Maurice's because we couldn't retain help. That's one of the reasons why we all voted to buy Maurice's. And then to learn the way the funding sources are and stuff, they make too much money. So we're not really helping the problem that we're trying to solve here. We're doing something different. We're just going by the funding source, which is not helping what our issues are here. We can't solve regional issues, and we just can't do that. We got to solve our own issues. We're in a very little tiny peninsula, and 65% national park. So, it is different, and we have to think differently. We can't house everybody. I'm sorry. People have to drive to another town to go to work. We start bringing in all these people. This has never been a year-round town. Okay, it seems like some people maybe are trying to make this a year-round town, and unfortunately, we don't have the services. We don't have the infrastructure. We have one road. We have the water issues, and yes, we do replenish the waters. And one way in and one way out, we get in a hurricane or a fire, we are in trouble. Or you better have a friend with a boat, because we're never getting out of here. I would like to hear from the fire department and from the police department and the DPW on what they think that the impacts are, or what their questions are, or what their concerns are, because our taxes are going to go up. Because we're going to need more employees. We're going to probably need a new fire truck, because I don't know if we have one that has a tall enough ladder to put out a fire on a 4-story building. I don't know. They might. I don't know. So we may need new vehicles, and how many employees they see, and I'd just like to have those, quick. And like the development, is the DPW going to have to start, doing the snow plowing and the roads, and so I think that it's going to be a big impact, and we're going to have to hire a lot of people. So I'd like to hear from them.
And that's my plan. I'm going to close the floor now to the public and open it up to First, our fire department.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I may, so 200% of AMI, as I said, is around $180,000 for if it's a one-person household. So to maintain that, that they would not qualify is not true.
Ryan, not to cut you off, but I know we want to get through this. The funding source that you're going for right now does not go up to 200% AMI. It doesn't go up to 200% AMI. LIHTC funding, 40B, any of state funding does not go up to 200B or 200%.
We've been very clear that there's a mix. There's some that will be funded by LIHTC. There's some that will be funded other ways. We're very interested in the attainable. I can't stress that enough. It's missing in this town. We all know it's missing.
But we have to figure out how we
Let's-
can fund it, is what I'm
I
saying.
want to put a stop to the back and forth. It goes through the chair
I'm sorry,
and only
through
through the chair. Thank you.
We need to have a solid plan, though. We can't just say, that's what we want, there may be down the road, and it's unfortunate. We need a solid plan. And if we don't have a solid plan, we should not be building for low income, because that's not going to help our needs. That's all I want to say.
Okay.
Because people he wants to throw out the 200% or 250, but that's not even a possibility at this time.
It is a possibility. So in Orleans, currently, right now, they're building some.
I'm going to call a halt because we're not making this decision now.
So I'm just making
It's a-
it clear that Orleans, right now, is in the process of building a number of attainable units. It's at the old colony that they took, and they found it's Hack, I believe, that is doing it. And they found that their break-even point was around 150 to 160% of AMI. So there is a model for doing it where you can deliver these units onto the market at a rate that's below, what the current market rate is, and capture that based off of the resale value of it. The question that the town is going to need to answer is, how much lower does the town want to go on that? Does it want to stay right at the break even? Do we want to chip in some subsidies on some to serve a little bit lower? There's a blend. So there is a model that's happening right now, just a few miles up the road.
Okay.
I just, a lot of the questions that are coming up, it's sort of the process of developing a piece of real estate like this and a project of this nature. It is an iterative process. And, there's some things we haven't figured out yet. And there's some problems that we encounter, and we'll have to find other solutions for them. But everyone's expecting that we have all the final answers when we're literally years away from, and we don't have the developer. So there's sort of this micromanagement here that is, I think, unrealistic. And people who, it's reasonable to have these questions, but they all will eventually get answered. And some of the answers may be that things that we're proposing are not feasible. And we'll have to deal with that when we get to that. But I think it's unrealistic to expect, I think people who oppose the density and the size of the project are just looking for where there might be a problem, and there might be. But we can't be expected at this point to have the answer to every one of those. We're working on that. That's the process. We have this we've been waiting for about 6 months to get a RFP out to this development consultant to help us with some of that. We are all volunteers. We're not, this is not our job. And the town, has recently hired a housing coordinator, which is great, and she's wonderful, but she's got a lot of things besides just Maurice's to deal with. So I think that there's a certain unrealistic set of expectations here.
Well, I think the reason we had this meeting tonight was to get these questions out in the open, and, get these concerns heard. And Carl is right. There are not going to be answers tonight. But now the questions have been heard. the concerns have been heard, and they're going to continue to be heard, and as time goes on, they will, I would expect, be addressed. At this point, I would like, as I stated before, to hear from our department heads to answer any of the questions that might be pertinent to them. Joe, would you like to come up?
Chair, Joe Capello, Fire Chief.
Yep.
Anyone questions?
Yeah, does anyone have any questions specific to questions of public safety related to fire and rescue? Okay, come on up.
Joan Wall, and I live on Springbrook Lane. I'm concerned about the traffic. I just recently read, oops, I'm sorry.
Bring it closer to you.
Oh, okay, thank you. The Cape Cod Commission did a study. It does go back a few years, but Wellfleet they deemed as a high-risk traffic area. Within the time period of the study, there was 578 accidents, 1 fatality, and 21 serious injuries. When the traffic backs up in the summer, you can't move. I work with someone who works in Wellfleet. It took him 2 hours to get back home using the back road. Couldn't get on Route 6, it was so backed up. So I'd like to hear from the fire and the police, their concerns about these issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. In regards to traffic, I think that's best answered by the police department. But for the fire department, it all depends. I mean, when you have bumper-to-bumper traffic, we have less accidents. If there are accidents, they're fender benders. It's more so when we have the shoulder seasons, and then you have more room in the locals, and others have more space. They end up speeding, and then they end up getting in trouble with that. So that would be my answer for the summertime. Everyone's slow, and it's slow going, and we know that. The ambulances can make that happen. Oh, yeah.
They do.
I can vouch for that.
I can too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, Chief. There have been discussions in town, I'm not sure if they're accurate or not, that by developing Maurice's at the scale that's proposed, that the fire department will require a second fire station. Can you speak to that, please?
Absolutely. I wouldn't necessarily say it would be because of Maurice's campground. I would say it's because the location where our fire department is. When they moved from Commercial Street, and I'm not sure if any of you knew that the fire station originally started on Commercial Street, and they purchased the land where it is now, they concentrated on that area because it was next to the school, opposed to putting it in the central part of town. So now, whenever we have calls, whether it's a motor vehicle accident, a fire, or a medical call, it takes us a long time to get to that end of town. So my thought would be, yes, I would like, if we have the opportunity, to fix that problem, because it'll help out in many different ways for insurance rates. If we have what we call ISO, that'll help drop your insurance rate down. We'll have better response. We'll have better timing for all medical calls, especially in that whole area, whether it's the other trailer park on the other side, Lieutenant Island, and so on. So that would be my answer. Would it impact us just for that one development? I mean, calls of service might go up, but I can't predict. I know I spoke with Eastham Fire Chief about her low-income housing and the other housing they put in, and their calls of service did not go up drastically like they thought it was going to. So, but in regards to the second building, it would be because of the geographical area where our main building is now.
Through the chair?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'll defer.
And just to follow up on that, it's something that the master plan doesn't cover, but I'm curious on your opinion of this, is that should we be considering using part of the 21.5 acres for the substation?
If the opportunity arises, I would definitely take that on, because there's no other land available anywhere. The Station 2 that we currently have, that was too small for us to begin with.
That belongs to the DPW.
And now the DPW houses their vehicles and stuff. And, we do a wrestling match to get that back, but I don't think that's happening.
I appreciate your answers. Thank you.
Speaking of calls for service, what's it been like with the campground in normal operation? Is anything unusual?
When they're in season, we have our calls there, but it's not drastic.
Mhm.
And it's nothing that we can't handle.
Okay. Tom?
Chief, I have a question. What if, I don't know if this is possible or not, but there is heavy traffic during the 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., if you will, during the summer. Kind of slows down a little bit at night. Not always, but not on the weekends, but during the week. Would it be possible, or does it make any sense? It may mean buying an additional ambulance unit. I don't know that yet. To house a unit in a truck down there during the busy time during the day for May to October, if you will, through shoulder season, and close it up and just run out of the other station the other part of the year.
I mean, I would think that we'd probably have to do a study to see the daytime calls versus the nighttime calls versus that time
Yeah.
of, at that
I'm just
time of the year.
trying to think.
Oh, no, I appreciate that question for sure. But my mind also thinks about the other parts of the town,
Yeah.
not just that area. And
Yeah,
'cause
I
we
know
do have
when
people
we-
that live year-round in those other parts of town.
I know when we had bridge closures or summer traffic, we would station a crew down on the south side of the bridge when I was working. Yeah.
Through the chair.
Yes. Tim?
For full transparency, myself, Ryan Curley, and Roland had a meeting with the fire chief, the police chief, second in charge of police, and with DPW. So I am aware of some of the issues that they talked about. But one of the issues was, and I believe, was that your response time is actually longer than it is for Eastham to respond to South Wellfleet. So they end up rendering some mutual aid a lot, and that was one of the reasons you were hoping for an additional spot.
When we have motor vehicle accidents, Eastham is automatic aid because they make it to the town line before we do.
Okay. And another thought, we have Gestalt Center. There's 4.5 acres there. Okay? We could build there for them because that would put him much closer. It also put him kind of in the center of South Wellfleet. And we have the right to widen that road. So I'm just throwing that out there too.
Possibility too. Yep.
Mr. Chair, I have a question
Yeah,
for
sure.
the chief.
Sure.
I'm not sure if it's you or the police or DPW that I should be asking this question to. But you saw one slide earlier of some traffic count data that was collected last year. Basically, we were in discussions with the Cape Cod Commission to do a preliminary traffic analysis. They were willing to do that. That was Stephen Tupper. And the first element of that was, to collect the traffic count data. And so we actually made it in time for that season for the counters to be placed at a variety of intersections and turnouts right around there. One thing that we're really struggling with is just the available bandwidth of the volunteers in general. I was wondering if maybe public safety or DPW might be able to coordinate with the Cape Cod Commission to facilitate the preliminary traffic analysis.
Yeah, I would think that would probably be better answered by the police department.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
No. Looks like Jay was
Excuse me, Jay
volunteering.
Norton.
Or the DPW, as the case may be.
I'll take that one. Good evening, everyone. Jay Norton, DPW Director. I have been in touch with Cape Cod Commission on similar topics and similar studies, so I can certainly take on that role. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
We definitely would appreciate it.
Is there anything further for the fire chief?
Chief,
Yes.
when we had met a few years ago, we had discussed about building heights and the ability of the apparatuses to reach various heights, and then also what you need to be able to safely access a building, particularly like pads for the apparatuses to deploy on. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Whenever a new development is installed and whatnot, such as to this magnitude, we'd have an engineer engineer the length of our vehicle, the ladder truck, which is our longest and tallest vehicle, and make sure the roadways are wide enough and the turning radiuses are appropriate for our trucks to get in there, and make sure that we can operate appropriately. And as far as the heights, everyone's worried about the height. Our ladder truck's 75 feet from the rear end to it, so a three-story building is not a problem at all. And plus, Eastham has a ladder, so we can multiple ladders around it as well as Orleans.
So just as a recollection, is basically, I remember some of the previous debates about heights, and the objective was actually so the fire department wouldn't have to buy a ladder truck, and ultimately the state was like, you guys have to buy a ladder truck.
Well, there's, with the ISO, which I mentioned before, if you have a certain amount of three-story buildings, then you need a ladder truck for your community. And we have plenty of three-story buildings in town, in the central district.
Got three hands up. One of them is Chief LaRocco, so I'm going to take him first.
Only wait.
Thought you were on a plane, Chief.
Good evening. I'm sorry I was in earlier and I had to leave. I'm heading out for vacation. But I am here for a couple more minutes if there was any questions directed that I needed to help out with answering.
Can you buy us plane tickets?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Can I fit in your luggage?
Go ahead, Josh.
The fire chief just commented that Eastham hasn't seen an increase in calls for service. Have you had similar conversations with neighboring communities that have built housing developments of similar scale, and has there been any change in calls of service volume?
Yes, I have. I have spoken to Eastham Chief Bohannon. They did have an increase in service when that, I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of the development, but when that opened up, there was a significant increase for police services. And, you know, with Lawrence Hill Road, I mean, we've only been open 10 days, maybe 2 weeks, and we've already had 3 calls of service there, and there's only a handful of residents in there so far.
What type of calls do you respond to?
Some of them have been criminal in nature, but due to privacy laws, I cannot speak of them.
What about the non-criminal, I guess?
There's only been 3 calls of service in the last 10 days, and all have been criminal.
Oh, all right.
All right. Anything else for Chief LaRocco? Okay. There are 2 hands up. Will B. and Warren Dickerman. Is this pertinent to the department heads that are on the floor now?
Yes.
Okay. And who is this?
This is William Barrio.
Okay.
My question was, how much more staffing are we going to need for the police and the fire department for that much influx of people? So we're obviously going to need more for DPW. We're going to need more EMTs, more fire, more, police. Curious, what do you think the numbers would be for increasing for salaries for more paramedics and fire department and police?
As far as more staffing, yeah, I would love to have more staffing, but again, I'd have to have a study done in regards to that. I love you, Tom. I would definitely want at least 1 more per group to get started, so then I could make that split and have that second station available, so I can have 2 staff.
So that would be 3 more?
That would be 4 more, Chief.
Okay, with that,
Nice try, Tom.
Deputy Chief Turner, could you answer that on behalf of the police?
Deputy Chief Mike Turner, I got off the hook there with the chief for a minute, but.
He's gone now.
I guess he's gone, now he's on vacation. No, I would say we would definitely need more staffing. I couldn't give the exact figure.
Chief has mentioned up to possibly 2. That's
Yeah,
initial discussion, that's beyond.
I would say more than that, but, again, I can't give you an exact figure, but we definitely would need more staffing. It would definitely increase our calls for service.
Through the chair.
Yes.
And that would require an extra patrol vehicle then also, right?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, I can't say that for sure, but most likely.
Yeah, it'd be a little early to try to answer that in too much detail.
Yeah.
Mr. Dickerman?
Where would they live, the new staff?
Can you repeat that? Yeah, we didn't get it.
Yeah, we can't hear you. You have to unmute. All right, Mr. Dickerman, unless you can unmute, we're going to have to move on because it's getting really late.
Yeah, he's still muted.
I've given him permission to unmute.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah, that was the question.
oh, okay. All right, we're going to move on then.
We don't know where they would live.
Yeah. Okay, I think this is going to be the last hand raise that I'm going to answer, and this is John Tanzi. This is your second bite at the apple, so do you have a question for any of the department heads here?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment because, again, with all these added people coming into these development areas, first responders will have to increase, more police, more fire. I don't know what their salaries would be, what years of tenure they would be to come in, but where would those people live?
Well, that's part of the general discussion.
I'm just saying, this is the point. I mean,
That was good.
I just wanted to make a point. I appreciate it.
All right. So, Chief Laurent, Chief.
Yeah,
Capello?
Chief Capello, it's fine.
It's getting
I
late.
just want to let everyone know that we would have absolutely no idea. They might already have a place somewhere in Brewster or Orleans, but I just want to let everyone know I do have one staff member that lives in Bridgewater, and he commutes to work. Because the pool for us to obtain qualified EMT, paramedic, firefighters is very slim, and for them to be able to live in this area is very difficult, so.
Okay, well, I appreciate all three of you taking the time to be here and waiting this out.
Excuse me.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
I do have a closing comment I'd like to make.
Excuse me, John?
Yeah.
Can we ask the DPW director questions?
Oh, yeah, certainly. I'm sorry. Sorry, I didn't mean to leave you out, Jay. It's,
No.
Yeah.
You know Tim's there. And first, Jay, thank you for all the great work you do with the Herring River, the roads, the snow plowing, everything else.
Absolutely.
And I have
Thank you.
asked you this question, and then I have one other that I haven't asked you. The roads that will be built inside Maurice's, even though they're private, you guys have a form they can fill out so that you would have to maintain them during snowstorms. Is that correct?
There is a process for that for private paved roads, yes.
And they would probably meet it, right?
Yes, actually, this is going to be one of my questions. Is the model of Maurice's going to mimic the model of 95 Lawrence, where there'll be a management company, overseeing the utilities, the plowing, the drainage system, all the infrastructure maintenance that would be associated with our department, because that would dictate if we need more resources on staff to handle that. So that was one of my questions for the group tonight.
The plan is to actually have a management office on site. Particularly, that's an advantage of having a larger number of units for them to oversee. It becomes hard when there's smaller developments because they don't want to necessarily have a dedicated staff member on site for a smaller one, but it's one of the advantages of doing something a little bit larger.
Okay. So these are the questions that I would have when we meet, as a group. I don't need to, go into detail tonight, but that was one of my concerns, and that would dictate how, what my response would be to that.
What about trash?
Trash, that was another question. MSW obviously would increase transfer station, how the model with that would work. Would people just get stickers, or would there be dumpsters on site that a separate, trash hauler would come in and remove that material, or, what the options were there?
And through the chair, one other question. Oh, and if you use my model, you'll be doing some of that work if we have individually owned homes,
Yeah.
which I'm pushing for. But we're going to have water there, okay, and we're going to have a septic plant, right? Now, I know you don't usually deal with that, but when the pier went down, okay, and there was nobody there, DPW had to step in.
Mm-hmm.
How much work would you be required to do involving those two things under a normal situation, if any?
I mean,
A guess is fine at this point.
yeah, it's pretty substantial. I mean, we're cut thin as it is now with all the maintenance in town and all the additional responsibilities we've gotten over the years, and we haven't really increased our staff at all. Maybe one custodial position in the last 2 or 3 years. So it would be a substantial increase in our responsibility.
So that would require probably extra employees.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And equipment.
And equipment, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Tom?
Through the chair, though, relative to the wastewater, I would assume, and I don't know where we are with this yet, that we would have a similar model that we have up on Lawrence Hill, where there would be a management company that would come in. You wouldn't be hiring other people. We would be hiring a management company to come in and do that. It would be less expensive.
Like Veolia or whoever it is?
Yeah, Veolia, Woodard and Curran, Weston and Sampson, they all have divisions that do that type of work.
I mean, we'll be dealing with that question more and more as we
Right.
move forward in terms of wastewater overall, so.
Yeah.
And Tom, thank you. And Jay, thank you.
No problem. Another question I had, well, more of a concern would be the curb cuts that are proposed. I know there's a couple different concepts, one with having 2 curb cuts in addition to village lanes, so there essentially be 3 points of entrance and exits within a close proximity in a really dangerous area. So that was one of my main concerns in that particular aspect, so just.
I think there's actually, I'm trying to remember what Studio G came up with, and I believe they eliminated 2. Because there's 2 to Billingsgate, and I think both plans show it coming through the main entrances, which makes, I think, good sense.
Yeah, yeah.
And there has to be 2 points of access and egress for the fire department.
I know, I saw one of the concepts was coming into Village Lane, so that particular area would have more influx of cars coming through that particular location.
I'd have to double check, but I think for at least that one, we might have talked about using a gate. We don't want to introduce a lot of, sorry, I'm away from the mic. We don't want to introduce a lot of additional traffic into existing residential neighborhoods. It is a public road, but, yeah.
Yeah. And that will have to go through Mass DOT anyways, that's not a town curb cut.
What about signalization?
I mean, that was discussed and trying to consolidate a lot of those access points with Gill Road and West Road and, the drive-in and all those locations. that was brought up to MassDOT, but, given all the work that's going on there and the moratoriums that will be on that location after they pave the road, it will be 5 to 7 years, I believe. So, that might align with this, but something to consider.
Through the chair.
Yeah.
Currently, there's 3 curb cuts there, 2 that go to the store and 1 that goes in. Like they said, Studio G, we don't know if that's going to be our plan or not, as they've said all night. We don't really know what we're going to build there yet. Personally, I take Studio G's plan, curl it up and throw it away, start over, but that's just my personal plan. Okay? But thank you.
Do you have any further questions for the?
I don't have nothing at this time, but I would really enjoy the opportunity to sit down and get some more answers and just to get a better, clear definition of what to expect and how to plan for that and what the financial impacts will be on the town.
I agree.
Thank you.
Deputy Chief Turner, do you have any further questions for the Maurice's board or for the select board? Chief Capella? Okay. In that case, I'm going to just make a couple of closing comments and wrap things up. I feel this has been a very productive meeting. I think it's refreshing to see the degree of participation we've had. I think it bodes well for town meeting. I've always maintained that self-government is not a spectator sport, so I'm glad to see that there's a number of people that agree with that. From the very outset, I supported the purchase of, I'm just speaking strictly for myself, not for the board or anyone else, but I supported the purchase of the campground. I still support it. I supported it then and support it now to directly deal with the needs we have to maintain a viable community, which includes tradespeople, the fishing community, the people that make a community work. We have a potential public health crisis with the difficulty that Outer Cape Health is having in maintaining a decent staffing level, and that goes directly to housing. These are all critical needs. At the same time, I tend to agree with those who say that I agree with it. I understand the difficulties with funding, and it's going to take a great deal of creativity going forward to make this work the way we need it to work. We cannot afford, in my opinion, to address housing issues elsewhere in the Commonwealth. The issues we have here are critical to our community. We need to strike a balance, as our co-chair pointed out, between the environmental needs of this delicate peninsula we live on and the needs to maintain a functioning community with the ability to maintain our infrastructure, our public safety, our public health, and just all the components that make a community function. I think this meeting has been a step in the right direction as far as making people's concerns and feelings known about this, and will help give us some direction. What I would like to see is more. I think one of the reasons we've had this level of concern is a certain lack of communication. We need to have more communication between the board and the select board, which is these last 2 meetings have been a step in the right direction there. We need to have more interaction with the planning board. We need to have more interaction, as our Director of Public Works pointed out, with our departments. So going forward, I think more horizontal communications is going to really help us get to where we need to be. I'm not sure how much this has helped as far as how we're going to address the articles at town meeting, but I hope this will give people something to think about between now and then. And if anyone else on the board has anything they'd like to.
So just very quickly, we've been trying to schedule meetings with departmental staff for well over a year. There was even one scheduled last summer that was canceled. We've tried rescheduling that a number of times. It just hasn't worked out. What the committee really needs is, right now, I mean, we're all volunteers. It's a huge amount of work, and if we're responsible for reaching out to everybody else, and I mean, we did an enormous amount of work in developing the master plan and the reach outs we did, and you know, we talked to business owners, we talked to abutters, we did you know, focus groups, we did all sorts of things. That was a huge amount of work. But what the committee really needs is basically staff support of some shape or form. We could, you know, potentially utilize either, you know, some of the monies that have been approved by town meeting to assist the committee, or potentially the Mass, I forget which program it was, but either Mass Works or Mass Housing Works program grant, to at least hire somebody to help us coordinate. I mean, it's unreasonable to expect, you know, committee members to constantly be producing presentations and things of that nature. We really need staff of some shape or form that's commensurate with the importance of the effort.
Tom, do you have any suggestions along those lines?
Not at this time.
Okay. Well, that's something we need to definitely
Yeah, I think
work on.
we have a number of committees that are going to need staffing up, but
Yeah.
This is doing an awful lot of work, and we've got to figure out a way to be able to do that. The county, the commission may even have some technical assistant monies available for that, too.
I think,
Yeah,
and I think maybe more frequent, just, you know, verbal reports to the select board on progress and, you know, any changes that are being made would be helpful.
So my thought is that, you know, we do have monies as a committee. We don't need an additional line item at town meeting to fund a staff member of some shape or form. You know, I'm not sure exactly how to do it, but we really need, you know, a project coordinator. You know, the example today of even just asking the DPW to help assist on doing a preliminary traffic analysis. The committee only has so much bandwidth, and, you know, we kind of work on one or two things at a time, and then once they're done, we move on to the next. But some of these things are just taking a really long time, and you know, a lot of the questions that are out there, like, you know, the traffic is a perfect example. Like, you know, there's things to do to help answer that question, and we just do not have the bandwidth as, you know, individuals, and putting in the amount of effort we already are to basically meet all of those, you know, meet all those requests and everything else. So.
I got just the person, I think. Okay.
Yeah. Josh, I'm sorry.
Very, very quickly, but I support Mr. Curley's request. I think the Herring River Restoration Project is a great example of how a dedicated project coordinator has allowed that project to move forward and succeed as it has. I think no matter where Maurice's goes, it's only going to get more complicated. And so I think we need to begin, and we likely should have supported this group earlier, but I think Mr. Curley's suggestion is excellent.
All right, is there anything else? In that case, I'd like to thank everybody for being here this evening, everybody online, and for helping this to be a civil and collaborative process.
Mr. Chair, I move to adjourn.
Okay. Okay. Roll call vote on adjournment.
Ryan, aye.
Josh, aye.
And John, aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, John.
Everybody.
And Sheila.